everyone joining us. In as much, I guess, applying to our rules of virtual participation, we do ask if you're able to turn your camera on to please do that. Thank you. We'll start this meeting with a roll call of our participants. Ms. Scott?
Yes, ma'am. Town of Ashland, Miss Amos,
Here.
Miss Ragland. Charles City County, Mr. Mitchell, Miss Russell. Chesterfield County, Vice Chair Smith,
Here.
Miss Walker. Goochland County, Mr. Goyne,
Here.
Mr. Coleman. Hanover County, Mr. Vidunez, Mr. Hardman.
Joe is on the way in. I see
Okay.
him.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Henrico County, Mr. Yor,
Here.
Miss Smidler.
Here.
New Kent County, Miss Enman,
Here. Good morning.
Miss Leduc. Good morning. Powhatan County, Mr. Shardine. City of Richmond, Sheriff Clark.
Present.
GRTC, Mr. Darkwa.
Here.
Miss Robinson.
I'm here. Good morning.
Good morning. Plan RBA, Mr. Bushing.
Here.
RMTA, Miss Dean. Virginia Port Authority, Miss Nelson. We have Miss Nelson. She had joined the Zoom. I will mark you as present. DRPT, Miss Dubinsky. Mr. Wagner.
Here.
VDOT, Mr. Totten. Mr. Riblet.
Here.
And Miss McAdory. Thank you. That concludes the roll call for attendance. We do have a quorum.
Thank you very much. We're now moving to item 3 on the agenda, public comment period. Not sure. I know I received a couple of emails. Not sure we have anyone signed up from the public. Chet or Ms. Scott, outside of, I guess, the regular public comment period that we're under, just anything specific to this meeting?
Nothing specific. Like you mentioned, we've had a lot of questions and comments about the call meeting for next Friday, but that's the most of it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, with that, we will get to the meat of this meeting. It is the item 4 CVTA Regional Project Cycle Round 3. I think that CVTA staff did a great job in the agenda description and really hoping that what the Finance Committee tasked us with was clear in regard to the financial aspects, and then moving on to how the projects, this meeting will look at how the projects benefit regionally. Are there some reductions in funding requests, the project readiness, opportunities for leveraging, and then really overall consensus with the members if there's some issues. I am going to start with Ms. Choi. I'm going to just explain a little bit, just reading off of the agenda, so that we can first kind of check off everybody's understanding of what the ask and what that does to any of the programming. So item A is including an additional year of programming of funds, which would align with the Smart Scale round 6 through FY31. And so with that, I think to start the question, my first question or point of clarity is what, if any, impact to the overall financial outlook of the authority does, and that being bonding in the future, does putting it out a year, does that impact any of that financial outlook in regard to that additional year of funding, and not yet talking about the capital reserves or set aside dollars. Ms. Choi?
Sure. Yeah, I think in terms of the financials, I think that the authority understands that by extending out another year's worth of revenues to allocate today, that's just going to mean that there will be further constraints to the pay-go availability in cash for the future down the road. So we're in essence, accelerating, so to speak, or adding and going ahead and using up that capacity to fund for projects all today. So I think that that is just a direct impact, is that there will be, if we use those funds now, that those funds obviously aren't available in the future, so they'll just be used up today, and that capacity will be absorbed today. In terms of the bonding capacity, since the authority is, if they are not assuming any leveraging or usage of debt today, which I haven't heard that was being considered in the finance committee meeting, but if assuming that no debt is being issued today, we would still be able to issue the debt and have the leveraging power in the future. It's just that, we will be in that case, we'll now then be using, further out projections of revenues to leverage that at the point in time the authority does wish to use. So, I think it's just a matter of, do we want to preserve that additional year's worth of revenues for projects in the future years, or are we using it all up today? And I think that's the question, and that's the reality. And I don't think that from the credit agency's perspective, that the rating agencies really care about how the authority decides to program its funds and the timing of which it decides to use those funds. I don't think that they really would look at that in a negative or a positive light. I just don't think. I think it's neutral. I don't think they really have a strong view one way or another. That's up to the authority to decide how it wants to program and use its funds. And so I don't think that there is any credit concern from what I can see in adding another year's worth of revenue to fund the project list that is in front of them today.
Okay, thank you. And I think just for me, I'll just say this. So what I heard was we have kind of two levels of capacity: pay-go cash capacity and then bonding capacity. What this adding the year is really our projections that we have for the fuel tax and how we are going to budget that and what's going to be available in any kind of pay-go scenarios in the future. I think that impacts that, because we always wanted a pay-go along with bonding capacity in the long-term outlook of the authority, I think, from the technical side. And then the bonding is what she's saying is then it only would say if the bonding years was 30 years from, FY 30, then it would be like F to FY 60 versus it being FY 61. As far as, adding that year. So I think that's very good for us to understand and be able to explain to our locality representatives when it comes to looking at the programming versus the decisions in the direction they've given us. The second explanation, to keep with Ms. Choi's time, is the reserve. So we know, and so what we're talking about is really, and I guess, Chet, could you just, for the point of that item, tell me what that dollar amount is that would be attributed to adding an additional year?
Sure. Yeah, thank you very much. We are talking about an amount of funding that staff set aside uh, before this round started.
Hold
Uh,
on, Chet. Hold on, Chet.
Yep,
Not on the, I'm not on the reserve yet. I just want the dollar amount from adding a programming year.
an extra year.
Yes.
Okay,
That'd be the first million.
that amounts with the assumption of a 35% set aside, which mirrors, it just duplicates the percentage from FY30. The
Mhm.
amount available would be 60.2 million for FY31.
Okay.
Based on the current assumptions and projections that we've received from VDOT.
And we did, I think, have a point of clarity with that, in that I needed to know, did the assumptions include like inflation for leveraging amounts?
No, so the assumption of the 60 million, the inflation would apply in the assumptions for each individual project that may be considered. I mean, Miles, I think you want to say
Yeah,
something.
can I jump in? Is the question the leveraging for the existing projects that we have to add the 14% or whatever the inflationary impact was? So that's
Yeah.
already factored in. So that 62 or the 60.2 that Chet mentioned, that is above and beyond what's already included for the additional leveraging. So this would be for new project selection or additional leveraging from the projects that were in the pool that we're looking at this time.
Yeah, because I know that, and Todd, you may want to talk about it, but I know that we talked about the leverage amount is a flat amount and it doesn't need to be inflated for cost. Potentially.
Yes. So yes, in the scenarios that staff has developed, because we asked for estimates in a base year, so we asked for estimates in current year, and since the estimates were then inflated, all of the requested leverage was also subsequently inflated because it was trying to match that same share of the cost. So that was the approach that we took in developing, you know, what went before you at the last meeting and what's in the packet now for the benefit basis. But for the that was for the new selections. Everything existing was just based on the policy of move it out 2 years to line up with the next smart scale round.
Madam Chair, if I could ask a question to Miles.
Yes, sir.
So Miles, so the projects that had leverage money last in round 2 that were not awarded, so we know there's several. So is that carryover allocation stay flat for that leverage amount, or is that escalate?
Oh, so if they're carryovers, there's an inflationary factor added to them. So that was the baseline that we presented. I think it was 2 TAC meetings ago. But basically what we did was we moved the start year up to fiscal 26 from fiscal 24, and then put it back in the cube to add the inflation on. So I think on average, it was about 14% added to each of those projects. And that's the policy. That was part of the revisions when we went through the guidelines last summer.
And do you know offhand how many projects that impacted?
Yes, I can. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Looks like 8.
I
8
see.
projects.
Yep.
Do we know that dollar amount? Maybe
We can calculate it really quickly for you.
Thank you. While you do that, Barb,
I'm sorry to be repetitive. It's just helping me understand. So let's say we had a project, we asked for 10 million in leveraging last round. You have adjusted the project estimate 2 years, and the leveraging also went up with inflation 2 years.
Correct. So if the total estimate went up by 14%, your leveraging went up by 14%. So it was basically all we did was change the start year with the cube using the totals that we already had from before.
Okay. And then another changing to a different whole subject, the bonding ability. So Christy, I think I was understanding if we wanted to issue bonds in 2 years, let's say, what we're doing today with programming money through FY31 won't impact our ability to do that.
No, what will be impacting the bonding ability at that point will be the then, projections of the revenues that we have, which is a critical part of the capacity analysis.
So if the economy tanks and the money that we've been collecting, instead of going a little bit up, is going way down, is that what you mean?
That will yes, correct, because
Okay.
that revenue stream is what really drives the bonding capacity. And then the other aspect that we'll need to think through at that point is, so let's assume that we are going to be issuing debt in fiscal year 2026 in your example. We will have to start making interest and principal payments, starting the following year, whatever amount that may be. And there's many different strategies to, either issue debt with equal amounts of principal and interest debt service payments, or we can, do some deferred principal, like all of those things. Setting that aside, we will have payments to make once debt is issued, most likely in the following fiscal year. So if we're issuing in 2026, we'll have payments to pay in 2027 and beyond. So we will need room to, in addition to the pay-go dollars, if everything is aligned perfectly to the T and the projections of the capital, expenditure schedule stay exactly the way that it stands, we'll just have to make sure that we still have money to be able to afford and pay the associated principal and interest payments starting the following year of whenever we decide to issue debt.
Okay, so as we're going through this pay-go exercise, we wouldn't want to program every penny in these out years if we know that we've got interest and principal payments associated with a bond. Like if we're pretty solid on thinking that we want a bond in 2 years, we don't want to program all of our funding. Right?
It seems to me like there's, you all are already programming with some cushion, and based on, and of course those are accounted for other reasons, but you are not programming the entirety of the revenues, as I understand, based on the guidelines, right?
That is true. We've got this set aside
there. Mm-hmm. And I think you all know this far better than I do, but it seems to me that it is rare that the project expenditures are perfectly aligned with the expectations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you all again are the experts in this, but I think typically it is aggressive. So I mean. Like I said, I think if
cash flow isn't lining up with the programming.
Correct. And part of the idea behind my recommendation initially on this working capital reserve set aside that we haven't talked about yet was to deal with these types of cash flow mismatches. So, the authority doesn't have this issue now, but if we're programming like we're programming now, and the authority keeps on getting a bunch of projects requests and everything is flowing, there may be a year where a situation that you describe where everything is coming in at once, and we're a little bit stuck in terms of cash flows. Like the working capital reserve is also sort of it's sort of one way to deal with it is, that's not for inflation adjustment, but it's more for any cash flow mismatches. So my gut feeling is that there's enough levers to pull to be able to find ways to make debt service payments. And there's a lot of assumptions that you'll need to bake in today if you are trying to leave that amount unallocated, because we don't know how much, we don't know what the interest payment may be. Like there's just a lot of variables that will need to be assumed to make that available. So anyway,
Thank
that's
you.
my
And
Yeah.
that was my last question, was the working capital reserve.
Mhm.
That is somewhat disassociated from bonding. It's just good financial practice, no matter what you're doing, right? PAYGO or
yes,
some combination of PAYGO and bonding. It's just good to have the 3 months set aside.
correct.
Reserve.
That's kind of like
Don't
a
wanna get my
day's
terms.
cash on hand. That's to me kind of like a day's cash on hand that you'd want to keep. Correct.
Okay,
And so,
thanks.
thank you, Barb, for all those great questions. And then right before I get to everyone, I'm sorry, I just want to, so we can kind of get through this meeting. Christy, if you would just quickly, so we're talking about, there's currently like 20 million that was in the policy at the year time, for this set aside. And then in the scenario that I think the finance committee is considering is while we look at these additional dollars, we then make the set aside at the percentage that the plan says, which was 35%, which is what ultimately takes away from adding a new year to the program. And therefore, I think that the finance committee is saying that that probably is that set aside that's necessary. And so,
I've got a point of clarification, I think.
okay,
Deveraux.
Bart.
Can other people have a chance to ask questions, please?
I just need to clarify something that Dorona was saying. I think there's the working capital reserve 3 month, which is different than the 35% set aside, which is more like what we had in the framework document where we're ramping up how much we're not programming to, like we do with CMAC and RSTP, the unallocated funds that we leave not programmed to a specific project, just to have in the future in case projects go over.
Okay,
So two different things.
Then the question again becomes, which is my question to Christy, is then why is the 35 set aside in this scenario to withhold? And is that something that is the PAYGO or the bonding capacity?
Madam Chair, the 35% has nothing to do with the bonding capacity. If that's what your question was.
No.
Well,
is
it does
that-
kind of,
Yeah, it
because it can be used for the principal and interest.
Right.
But that's not the intent of why the 35% is there. That's in the
No.
framework.
Right, it's part of the framework document, just
Yeah.
saying we're not going to program every penny of every year.
But I mean, for a good correlation, it could be one and the same. Ms. Inman has been very
Okay.
patient.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Clark. Okay, no, I think this is really good. So the 60.2 million, that's net of the 35. So if we were to add the 60.2 million, we would still have the 35, reserve. My question is, Christy, how much bonding capacity do we have, right? So I haven't heard a number for a while. So if we were to bond out in 2 years, what would that leverage? How much would that leverage? And then what do you anticipate that payment to be for principal and interest? And would we be going after TIFIA bonds where they would be low interest? I'm assuming that's what we would be doing. Or what would we be going after?
Yeah, I think the initial analysis that we have done, and now we have had a chance to have some preliminary discussions with the rating agencies, is that the CVTA's credit strength is going to yield us in a really, really good rating category, very strongly in the AA, if not in AA plus. So with those type of ratings, we would definitively be able to issue debt and yield a very favorable result of our own. And we haven't really looked into other financing alternatives like TIFIA that will be another tool to generate even further leveraging power, since those have really favorable repayment terms and all that. But at the CVTA's senior lien, using the sales tax revenues that it collects and at a AA plus rating, that approximately, and using the revenue stream that we have, we've been, and this is a little bit outdated, but this is the number that we had shared with the finance committee, is that the bonding capacity is somewhere in the range of $300 million. And I will have to pull up my notes on the annual debt service obligation, which I can tell you in a few minutes while I have a chance to pull it up.
And that would be a
And
30
I'll say,
bonding
I'm
period.
sorry, Amy, I'll say that there's about 16 asterisks that need to be put on that number because it's all based on particular assumptions about coverage ratios and
Sure.
everything else that the
Absolutely.
authority hasn't talked about yet.
Okay, so, but that would be over a 30-year bond life.
Correct.
Okay. That's all I had. Thank you for right now.
All right, Mr. Ewer?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and actually Miles has his hand raised. I assume that was to answer the earlier question, so.
Oh,
my
no, I
que-
can read them.
My question is going to be related to what Miles says, so I'll let Miles go, and then I'll take the floor back.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Tom. So yes, I looked it up. It was in the finance packet. So it's 13.8 million was what was the additional leverage just on the inflationary adjustments for those 8 projects.
Wow, good to know. We're squeezing some money. Mr. Ewer?
All right, so going back to the 3-month operating capital reserve that we were mentioning. So question for Chet, that amount, which is roughly 21 million of holdback at this point, is not included in your 60 whatever million that if we add the additional year, that's just taken off the 35% reserve, not the 3-month operating capital, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So follow-up question is to Christy. So right now, as of December, we had 228 million invested of cash invested through Chesterfield's different avenues to get the interest income. Because back to that earlier point, our project schedules are not advancing enough to use all that cash now. So that cash is out there earning right at the moment a fair amount of interest. In addition, we have a lot of allocations coming up that's gonna basically have a reserve on money for leveraging. So that cash is all kind of sitting there available as needed. So the question for Christy is, do we need that 3-month operating capital reserve in the near to midterm? So over the next 1 to 2 years before we look to bond in potentially 2016, or is all that other cash that's out there for various reasons, is that sufficient financially to keep us in a good spot?
Yeah, I think the answer to that would be yes. And the reality is that those policies are not adopted yet. And so, that they first need to be adopted, but assuming that they are, I think we have time to build up on that. I do believe that that is a good financial management practice, but I view where CVTA is now in still its ramp up period. I think the authority has only had a very few expenditures requests and going out thus far pertaining to the fall line, and there's a ton that hasn't yet materialized. So to your point, Todd, I think there's a lot of time and room. The working capital reserve, I think, is really intended, and I think it will come into play when everything is in its full gear and we have active expenditures coming in, spa requests coming in, and to me it feels like that cash flow timing isn't really of a concern to CVTA given its operations. So I think there's time to build that up. The thing that I did mention to Chet in our prior conversations is that, whenever we are thinking about, bonding and that becomes a reality, that I think that is one of the financial management practices that will be looked upon very favorably from the rating agencies beyond the practical reasons as well. So I think we would want to show some, one, the policies being adopted, but then two, that we've made some progress or that we have started to fund some portion of that by the time that we're in a position to start talking to them about obtaining real ratings. But again, we have time for that, and I don't think it materially bothers me or the current state of CVTA's finances if it's not being funded right away.
Thank you. That's helpful.
All right, Mr. Parsons.
I really should just lower my hand because Christy just said everything I was going to say. So thank you, Christy. I do think that the appearance, the last point about going out and having discussions with credit agencies, it's important to, one, have the policy adopted, and then to not linger if the funds are utilized today to replace those. I mean, part of the policy is that the reserve will be replaced within 18 months. And I think that's a reasonable goal and something that we can achieve. The other thing, just for your all's information, the short-term investments that are going on to earn interest are, at this point, they're typically 6 to 12 months of having the funds tied up in those investment strategies, and then we go back and reinvest depending on the amount of money that's available. So it's pretty fluid in the long run to have the funds available that Todd was asking about.
Okay. So with that, I still would like to yield what is the exact number of dollars for the funding scenario based on, the information from the Finance Committee. So we would have had originally 151 million available. And so with what we've talked through, what's the amount that's now available?
I mean, Miles, I think the quick answer is we would have an additional 80 million if the 3-month reserve plus the FY31 assumptions were both utilized. So add that to the 150.
So the total would be 232.2.
And what about Ms. Emmon?
Sorry, darn mute button. So I just, maybe for consideration that we think about in terms of the bonding discussion, are there any projects on our list that are anticipated to go into the bonding program for CVTA? And if so, let's think about that as part of this discussion. Are those projects that are ready to go now, or are those projects that, the CVTA and the region really feel strongly that the only way they're going to get built is if they're bonded? And I see some big, really, pretty significant projects on here that might fit into that category. So if that's the case, I think we should all just be, clear about that and potentially talk about a different way of funding those, what I would consider to be mega projects for this region, right? Something that probably wouldn't be funded in a traditional way through any one of the funding programs that are available to us, whether it be CVTA, Smart Scale, other TPO pots of money. The capacity, it just isn't there for those. So those are obvious projects in my mind that should be flagged for figuring out how they're going to get bonded, but not funded necessarily today in this round, because that would be a 2-year strategy to get them funded. It's just a point to think about. Thank you.
Thank you. Barb?
So we have projects that were not submitted with this round that are potential projects for bonding. They're at various stages of readiness. So they aren't really ready for PAYGO at the time, right now. We're doing preliminary engineering or studies, or we've been seeking federal funds through RAISE and infra for those projects. So far, not doing so good with that. So when we did the wish list exercise not long ago, a lot of our potential bond projects are on that wish list. Not every project on that list is a bond project, but we included our big guys that are losers in Smart Scale and appear to be losers in RAISE, infra, and those types of federal grant programs.
Thank you. Mr. Ewer?
Yeah, similar to Chesterfield, unfortunately, and that we have several big projects that we're looking at multiple funding sources. None of them, and bonding, either combination of local bonding and regional bonding will likely play into those scenarios, but none of those projects are ready yet. We did submit our big project for RAISE and infra, just like Chesterfield did, and weren't successful this round, but we're going to continue to pursue that over the next several cycles. So I think in short, we anticipate need for bonding, but not within the next 2 years, for definite. I mean, things back to the point of big projects just take time and multiple funding sources.
All right. So with that, I guess, are we pulling up all of the requests, the whole entire project list that we put out for public review? Or I guess maybe one that we can use the Excel version. Ms. Inman?
Okay, sorry, Madam Chair. So can we talk about sort of how we're going to go about evaluating, sort of reshuffling the deck here? I know there were a few things that we heard in the Finance Committee. One was the benefit, right? So, thinking about how our investments are really going to generate and provide us with the results of the performance that we've evaluated each of the projects on. So I think benefit is definitely something that needs further consideration, as well as project readiness. And, I think we really need to be clear about, I think we need to be very clear about which program it's going in. I know, Darren, you've said, well, North-South is going to go in for FTA, either small starts or new starts. I don't know which program that's happening. So, what's needed for that? And then other projects that we know are going in for smart scale this round, VDOT has been very clear on what they're gonna look at in terms of project readiness. So can each of these projects meet that threshold, right? So I think maybe that's the first cut of, are the projects ready for leverage? And if not, where do they stand?
Yeah, and I think that the finance committee did state project readiness, but again, I don't think that all of the projects are being used for leveraging to smart scale. So smart scale's project readiness. And I think we've said that mostly all the projects are eligible for smart scale in some capacity we talked about. And so again, we really want it to be, we know that New Kent has one project on the list, so we clearly know that's your priority. And we know that other localities have priorities. We have the port on here. We have other interested parties, Mr. Goin, and everybody is here, Joe. And we got to get, we got to first, recognize those priorities and see what amounts that can go into applications and really leverage as being the technical people, knowing, hey, this may help to go through. I know I asked Miles, I don't know if we have that one exercise showing potential leverage amounts that would be okay for potentially good for smart scale, even though we know those rules have changed. But it was just like an exercise to see like what were some minimum thresholds and leveraging amounts that may work. Were you able to do that, Miles?
Sure. So we have what we prepared from the round 5 results. So any project that was previously submitted through Smart Scale, we can look and see sort of where the range was for last round. Obviously, with the rules changing, we don't know how it's all going to shake out, but that'll give us a baseline of where it would have fallen in the last round. So that's at least something for consideration.
Yeah, if you would share that.
And this,
and I wish we could have dual screen with the request, but if everyone have the request in front of them, that'll work. I'll take a question from Mr. Goin.
Yeah, thank you. Chad, I think I asked you this via email. Can we confirm in the original TAC approved scenario, there were 2 wildcard applications proposed to receive funds? Is that accurate?
Way to put me on the spot, Austin. I could
Yeah.
check. I think that's right.
yeah, I
Okay.
can jump in. It was the roundabout in Goochland and the Hull Street shared use path were both wildcard projects.
Okay, thank you.
So this is the shared screen, Dorona. Can everyone see it? So this is the analysis that we did last time for round 5 as part of the wrap up after the scorecards came out. So if you recall, what we did was basically look at the benefit cost score, look at the amount of leverage that was on the application, and then essentially calculate how much was the shortfall on leverage for the project to have been successful in round 5. And that was done through a process of iterating. If we adjusted the cost, where would it fall in the cost benefit ranking? Was that enough? And so we did that process for every project. So what we can do is if there's anyone that we want to look at where we're considering putting leverage on that came from this list, we can look and see where it fell last time. So, I mean, just because this is the project that comes right to the top of the head, we had the, where is it? I think it must be a Chesterfield, it's the middle. The 360,
Yeah.
Barb, help me out. Was that your application or was it ours for the 360 widening? Oh, here it is. So 360 widening. So we had 20 million leverage from CVTA. Our estimate based on the last round was that it would have been short by 7.5 million of what it needed to be successful. So if we have any projects, and again, the rules have changed for smart scale, so how applicable this is, I can't really say, but this was kind of a starting point for consideration as we start thinking through leverage. So anything that's previously been submitted through round 5, we could take a look at this if it's helpful. And
All right, so let's again, let's get the project list rank the by categories up, please?
In the chat, I put a link to what was sent out for the public notice. So that's every project. It's basically the cleaned up table that we discussed at the last TAC meeting.
All right. So what I want to start with is each of the localities. So again, we have those categories that that the finance committee said. And so it's almost, I know Richmond has had to look at ours and say, okay, what are our priorities and what could really help move those priorities forward? And then almost be able to talk about each of those or the dollar amount and the projects that I think are priorities for Richmond. Because I think the main thing is the shakeup, all of it has been rated and shown by cost benefit. A good way we could start, of course, is looking at benefit only. And looking at that through, okay, pick up where we left off, or benefit of, again, what are each of our localities' priorities, what those dollar amounts, what that looks like on your set of projects. So I don't know, otherwise, I think, Austin, Goochland was there a total of 4 projects or 3?
We had 4 applications and 3 were originally slated to receive funding.
Okay. And so when thinking about your locality's priorities, are those the 3 that were originally shown, or is the 4th one in consideration? What is your priorities?
So our priority as a county is generally in the East End, so Route 288, pretty much anything and everything on Route 288. We submitted 3 Route 288 projects. One of them, the cost benefit with our leverage ask was just too high. I think we asked for 15 million on the hard shoulder running lane, and it just didn't quite make the cut because of that. It's almost $60 million project. And tacking on top of the 15 million was the 4.7 or so I think we were awarded last round. So it was, I think, just shy of a $20 million total cost benefit score analysis. But then the other 2 Route 288 projects, the southbound auxiliary lane and the Route 250 improvements, they're key for us just getting folks on and off Route 288, as well as right there at the county line with Henrico, making sure that the inter-county travel is smooth and operates efficiently.
Okay. And as far as project readiness, how would you categorize your sets of projects?
So 2 of the Route 288 projects were round 5 smart scale submittals. So they're certainly going to be round 6 submittals with whatever funding shakes out here. The one that was not submitted last round for smart scale was the southbound auxiliary lane, but that was previously funded through the CVTA, and we subsequently stripped that funding for another higher priority project in our county. So I believe those 3 projects specifically are ready. For smart scale specifically, they all came out of stars, and I believe we're also out of the Gate and IAR. Todd, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think all 3 were recommended out of that as well. The Fairground Road was a corridor study we had done recently. That project is in the planning level stages. It might not meet as it sits today smart scale readiness. We hadn't anticipated taking it to smart scale, anticipated hopefully getting it fully funded through this body with that wildcard application. But that's kind of where our projects sit.
Okay, thank you. Very, very helpful. So I guess I'll go to Henrico.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So in the benefit cost scenario that went out to the public, the Henrico projects recommended for funding are all important, but and they're all pretty much leverage amounts. However, that list didn't really reflect the Henrico regional priorities, particularly the short pump and pulse extension to the west, or the Route 5 New Osborne project that also traverses into the city. So that was our actually wild card application that was not suggested for funding. The projects that are recommended in the current scenario, I think are all smart scale projects that we will continue to use leverage money. I think our preference is to switch out regional leverage money with local leverage money. So those projects will continue to move forward through that process. The projects that are important to get funding, leverage funding on now are short pump, which is a huge price tag that will have multiple funding sources, a significant amount of county money. We've already put a fair amount of county money on it for development purposes. Has VDOT, it's currently in NEPA, it has the conditionally approved FHWA IAR. So that's a priority for us to get at least a portion of the leverage money in place, so that does score well in smart scale and future rounds of infra mega funding. So as with the pulse extension, again, we need leverage money for multiple funding sources. That is going to be submitted through GRTC for smart scale this round, as well as any FTA available funding as that project moves forward. Same with Route 5, that will be multiple funding sources, including county funds, but we do need at least enough leverage money to start more formal PE. At this point, we have conceptual design. The other project I didn't mention is the Beulah Roundabout that already has some federal dollars on it through CNEC RSTBG program. And we were working on piecing together enough funding to fully get that one built. So any money available would be great, and the balance will probably be covered through local funding. So that's kind of our project portfolio that's in this round. And to Austin's earlier point, yeah, the 288 250 project and the 288 southbound aux lanes are part of the greater short pump package. So that's ultimately needs to be funded as part of that suite of packages for that area of Henrico and Goochland.
All right, and then Ashland.
Hi, Dirona. I am not at my computer. Do I have an outstanding project? I don't have any new projects to add.
Let me just
I think they have any projects there.
The main one is, our main project is going to be the 95 Diverging Diamond
So
at exit 92.
I can jump in, Madam Chair. It's
Thanks, Miles.
It's the intersection project at Route 1 and Ash Cake, Nora.
Ash Cake.
Yes.
So yeah, you requested about $2.6 million for the signal and pedestrian improvements.
Right, and we just want that for leveraging for smart scale, which we're planning on applying for.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Miles, was that one on the list from last year?
I'm not sure, but it has been a submittal for RSTP CMAC for a couple rounds previously, so it's gone through some level of estimate review and sketches previously.
I don't see it on this round.
It's on page 5 of the public document at the very bottom. Can everyone see it?
It's in the page.
Have you found it yet, Amy?
I'm missing a page. I'm gonna go see what I did. I'll be right back.
All right, I'll share it to screen. Everybody see it?
Yeah, we can see it.
There you go.
Thank you, Chet.
Sure, I can leave this up unless you all want to look at each other.
We need to look at each other. Oh, I see it. Got it. Sorry. I missed a page.
Awesome. So we've heard from Ashland. I will go to who wants to go next? Joe?
Sure, I'd be happy to go next. Ours are pretty straightforward. We hedged we had 2 projects. We hedged by submitting one project in several categories as a alternatives analysis, a PE only, and a full funding. That's our Route 361 at Grove Road. And then we use a wild card for another intersection project at Atlee and Meadow Bridge near the hospital and near the Henrico County line. I can't recall exactly what the funding recommendation is. I believe 360 Walnut Grove Road. Is that recommended for full funding in the initial scoring? Miles, do you know?
It's the PE, I believe.
Just
Yeah,
just
the
PE.
60% design for that one.
Right. And
Yeah,
and
there
our,
it is.
and then our other project, the Atlee Meadow Bridge, that was not in the recommendation. A mere $715,000 out of a $232 million pot. We would really be appreciative for the consideration of getting that one in, just so we can get underway with PE and have a better understanding of what we're dealing with at that intersection. Again, not a very big ask. And then back to the other project, it is, objective scoring. It's just my perspective, is a good starting point, but it doesn't really capture things. We can look at the downtown transfer station, which came out with 0 benefit, and we know why that is in the scoring, but nevertheless, it shows up on the score sheet as 0 benefit, and we all know that that's not accurate at all. And so I don't really feel like it can truly capture the importance of projects. The 360, I won't go on very long, but the 360 Walnut Grove was identified in a study relative to a new high school site that is being planned to replace Mechanicsville High School. And so it's an important project for us, and we'd be appreciative to see that one fully funded. That's it.
Thank you, Joe. All right, we will go to Ms. Inman.
Okay. All right, great. Well, we have one really great project. And I mean, we were really pleased that it really scored regionally in terms of benefit. And there are some other considerations with our project that, is going to depend on this CVTA money. And other kind of considerations in terms of our project. I mean, this project is going to support the Buc-ee's and other major development at 106 exit 211. You know, we have 1,600 acres of industrial and manufacturing that I think the port is very interested in as well. I'm glad Barb's on here. You know, that's right for development. We have 1.4 million square feet of distribution that's happening right now. Forge Logistics, 100 bays of, you know, truck bays. So there's going to be a lot of truck traffic in addition to the Buc-ee's. The Buc-ee's is expected to, you know, generate, if we didn't make any improvements at all, a 4.5 mile back up onto 64. We have other major development happening just north of Buc-ee's that is anticipated to follow Buc-ee's, which is going to generate even more SOV traffic into this area. So, you know, New Kent is the fastest growing locality in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and we're doing our best, you know, to manage all of that. And I will say that the economic benefit of Buc-ee's back to the region is it's estimated to produce back, in terms of funding, $1.3 million. That's in 2027 dollars, 18 million gallons of gas. So that's not even projecting the sales tax revenue that's going to be coming out of that. We have 75,000 square feet of retail that's going to be going in there. So it's going to be a massive generator, you know, back to the region. So we feel like this project isn't something that's not going to, you know, benefit everyone. And in addition to, that's just the economic benefit. That's in addition to the safety benefits and everything else that were reflected in our score. So the other piece of this is we have a $12 million private commitment of funding on this project that I am not sure if any other projects have private funding that is committed to their projects. But, you know, if this project doesn't move forward, you know, through this application cycle, then that 12 million is most likely going to go away, which is just going to leave the region and everyone to have to fund, you know, put more money onto this project. Our project is ready to go. We're ready to move it into smart scale. We have no trouble with meeting the IAR deadline for July 15th. I have done some pretty significant follow-up on that, and we're ready to go. We have a good draft of the IAR document right now that's going to be circulated. We have our preferred alternative, which was the diverging diamond. The consultants at Kimley Horn are finalizing that. We're meeting again in 2 weeks to look at that, and they're going to finalize the document and circulate it probably in the April timeframe. So we're not too concerned with meeting the screening criteria for smart scale. So it's just, you know, this is just a very critical project for us right now. In terms of the leverage amount, we might have a little bit of wiggle room, but probably not, you know, ideally not a ton of wiggle room, but we could probably come down a little bit in terms of our request. I am interested. I would like, Miles, I really like what you did on this, you know, the last round, kind of showing what the leverage amount needed to be successful for smart scale. I think that's a really, really great exercise. And I don't think we have time to do it right now, but maybe in future rounds, I think you should definitely do that again. That's sweet. There we go. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. I'm going to go to Chesterfield.
Okay, so our projects, I think in the benefit cost scenario that was developed, we had Busy Street showing up, which was a request for just additional leveraging. And it was, you know, Miles went through the exercise. We got a little bit in RSTP, but to really kind of lock it in a little more, because you never know how that's going to go, we requested some more through CVTA Regional. That project came out of a STARS study. Then we also have some money showing up for Route 60 through the village of Midlothian, which is corridor enhancements. We've got 30% design underway for that. And it's leveraging in this round of smart scale was that request. The projects that were not showing up, which are priorities for us, are Powhite Parkway Phase 1 extension, Powhite Parkway Extension Phase 1. We're designing 60% plans right now using CVTA local. And there's funding shortfall on that, so we need additional money to get it across the goal line. We also have the 360 Wood Lake to Otterdale project, which we're using some of the leveraging from last round CVTA regional to get our 30% plans done, which should be available next month. So we'll have a very informed estimate for the project and going into smart scale. And that was another one that showed up. Miles used it as an example just moments ago. So trying to get the additional leveraging to push it across the goal line with smart scale. We also had on our list 288 southbound CD Road with a ramp at Genito Road. That's in the study phase. We're working on an IAR. Actually, I think it's really I don't really know the term. Additional interchange, new interchange. And we need approvals for that to advance. So it's a little bit not quite as ready. We have a Huguenot project to do some capacity and safety improvements on Huguenot that came out of the VDOT STARS study. It was submitted last round in smart scale and didn't do so well. Busy Street did better. We also had Fall Line Trail, Route 1, Fill in the Gap project, which scored really badly in this benefit cost exercise. We also have Bellwood Connector, which was a PE only request, and that's one that we can put on the back burner. We can probably find another source of funding for that. So that's sort of where we stand. I think the projects that we felt were missing as far as considering regional priorities were Powhite and 360. Oh, do you mind if I talk about Powhatan? Because I did have a conversation with Mr. Chardine and they're not on this call.
Yes, please.
So when they looked at their projects, I think I don't know that they made any. Did any of the projects make the cut using benefit cost? So I think they had just 2. Can you confirm that? Both of them, I think, were full funding. Both had been submitted through Smart Scale previously.
Yeah, US 60 and Dorset Road.
And then 60 at 13.
I may have missed it.
Hang on a second. Here it is. Yeah, 16, 13, and 60 in Dorset.
Yeah, so their priority is the 60 at 13, which they're going to submit these through Smart Scale, and we'll take leveraging amounts. But out of the 2 of them, 60 at 13 is a higher priority for them, and they were willing to, not get the full project funded because they're planning on submitting in Smart Scale. I was wondering, Miles, in your exercise, since that had been submitted previously, how much was needed for it?
So it looks like they had leveraged 2 and they needed 3.5 on the previous exercise.
So a total of 5.5?
No, total of 3.5. So they were short just 1.3.
Okay. Thanks. I think that's it for me.
Thank you. Sorry. All right, is city left? I think the city's left. So, most of the projects.
Can I add some really quick?
Yes, Barb.
About Powhatan? They're a little shorthanded at the moment, and they have an advertisement out for like a transportation director or manager or something. And I did say I would share that with everyone here too.
Thank you. Awesome. And Joe, you said you had a position too, right? You're on mute.
Thank you. We do have a capital project specialist position that we're recruiting right now.
Thank you. Just making it a little moment of
Thank you.
oh, look at Todd. Mr. Ewer.
While we're recruiting and I know Sharon's on, she's looking for capital project coordinator while we're in the recruiting mode.
Yep,
We'll
it's on
have
our
an ad
page.
out soon also for a entry-level project manager.
Can we claim that this is a poaching free zone, however?
Great. Okay, great. So the city of Richmond's projects, we really took an approach of looking at really starting with what we thought was the minimum amount of requests that we could have. And probably with the cost benefit model that fared well in that we didn't, ask for large sums of dollars. But unexpectedly, my project, the downtown transit hub, I'm like, oh, can that get folded into the north south or, but they're really moving at different stages. And actually the north south BRT, the transit hub, the bus and bus facilities, FTA's bus and bus facilities is open now and will close in March. So potentially with help from the regional pot of CVTA funds, we would have a source for a match for those dollars, which would approximately be, I think we're putting in somewhere around $30 million. And then that's approximately like $6 million that's needed potentially for that match. And that was one of the projects that, of course, showed zero regional benefit, which I hope to build first, and then we can really see the regional benefit that a transit hub does give. And it was something I think about, there's an existing transit center there now, and that's the reason why there was like no benefit, because hey, you're just putting another one, not all of the great things that dedicated and something built for the movement of people around different modes of transportation within the city. Of course, biking, walking is very important to us. And so that kind of reflects a lot of our other project requests outside of North-South BRT. We're anticipating that with a conservative amount to do the areas within the city of Richmond at about $100 million to start off. And we think that 10% of that request would be something that we could move along and build that financial package for the north-south BRT. And I think I told Amy that, it's going to be a lot easier because she's done it before. So we know somebody can do it. And so now all we have to do is do it again. So, and we
did exactly what she was supposed to do. She showed everybody that it can work. She's amazing.
No, thank you, Amy. But, and so we're really, it's one of our priorities, a big priority for the city. And then of course we have our Fall On Trail, because of so much of the sometimes lack of infrastructure within a built environment, and trying to put something like that in within 8 lanes of traffic is really costly. So we were asking for additional leveraging dollars for that. I think Miles, was any of ours on the previous round 5 list?
The commerce segment was, I know for sure. Let me check if there were any others.
And what did the commerce one say?
Yeah, it's some scrolling through. I always have to remember whether it was a regional application or a local application. That was a TPO application. So that one, we leveraged 27 million, and the estimate was we needed somewhere closer to 50. So there was a shortfall on what was there for the leverage by a significant amount.
Yeah. So we're gonna be potentially trying to get that out to some of the federal projects, so that to wrap that up before we lose our leveraging. And so this is the effort to get additional money so that we can go out to some of those federal programs to potentially add with Smart Scale, because it still has a big gap in Smart Scale that may not get any closer this cycle. And then, so one of the projects, we took the approach of, okay, in regard to what has safety issues right now, and really that's our two Hall Street projects. And with that, we decided that some additional dollars would be needed for those, and that we would forego the longer term project on Forest Hill, only because the need exists right now for the Hull Street area. And then finally, we are, as much as we love our transit, we also love our port, and we are very adamant in that this moving of that project would benefit the growth of the port, and Richmond's impact on freight movement, and also secondary roads off of the interstate. Miles?
Yes, Madam Chair, I just wanted, if I could, just to remind everyone of what the TPO and Plan RVA submittals are for Smart Scale as well, just to help frame this conversation, which ones are going to be those regional applications that we've already approved through both of those boards. So this was the TPO's approved list, and the 3 projects highlighted in purple on here were submittals that were either asking for additional leverage or some leveraging funding to go into the process. So Huguenot Road in Chesterfield, 360 in Chesterfield, and Short Pump in Henrico. And then on the Plan RVA side, we actually had 3 out of our 4 projects were in the CVTA running as well. So Busy Street, the 288 at Genedo, and then Route 5 New Osborne Turnpike. So those projects have been identified as regional priorities for regional scale applications as well. So I just wanted to, for the consideration while we're looking at all the projects, those are ones that we know for sure will be advancing from Plan RVA or the TPO.
Okay. All right, and then I don't know if my vice chair, I don't have my laptop, my other laptop. So I think I've gotten everybody. Did I go through everything? All right.
Madam Chair, just to note, there were no Charles City applications.
Oh yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. But just to, yeah, so we've gone through each of our locality staff. But I do want, and so we in the finance committee's direction, we kept trying to get to that bottom number. Okay, what is this bottom number? And then you see us in the beginning of the conversation. So we can say it's at the 232 million, but I still had a question about the 13.8 million of inflation that was on the leveraging amounts. I think my question to to Miles and maybe Chet is, does policy direct us to inflate the leveraging request?
Yes, and I can share, I'll pull that page up really quickly and share the screen. So the policy here is basically adjust leveraging amount or no change. So it says, if no change, if the project sponsor is unsuccessful, the leveraging funds will be adjusted for inflation and programmed to fit the anticipated allocation year. So that was one of the changes that we made over the summer. And basically the way we did that was just take what your estimate was, drop it in a new fiscal year, and apply the cube inflation rates to calculate what that would be. So then the alternative is obviously you can adjust the leveraging amount. So that's sort of the baseline scenario. And then everyone who's requested an adjustment to the leveraging, that could potentially go on top of what's already in their sort of baseline.
Might not quite be there. Mr. Ewer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, yeah, thank you for that clarification, Miles. My question, I guess for Miles in chat, is for the projects submitted for leveraging with this round 3 set of applications. Did y'all take the leverage amount as requested, or did you also escalate that just based on out year?
So for the cost benefit scoring, we didn't escalate it. So what we did was we took what was locked in plus the current year of the new amount, but then we did escalate it if it was successful. So we would have at like a $10 million request, you actually wind up with 13 or something along those lines. So
I think that's where my confusion is. I don't so much have a problem with putting the escalation in for the last round, because here we are 2 years later. So what leverage money we need is increased because of that inflation consideration. But for this round, at least speaking for Henrico, our leverage projects, the amount we put in was the amount we were expecting as leverage money, and not an escalation off of that. So it may be a useful exercise for the projects, at least the ones that were recommended in the staff scenario, of what that escalation amount was for those leverages. I don't know how quickly or easy that is to calculate at this point.
I don't know if we'd be able to do it quickly, but there were only, I guess the challenge and what it is on the application, we asked for current dollars and everything. And so when we applied inflation, the assumption was you'd want to also match your project cost being inflated as well. So that was how staff approached it. I think for the next round, we will make sure to clarify on leveraging requests. Is this the year of expenditure dollar, or is this something that needs to be inflated as part of the process? So I think it's on our parking lot, but we definitely understand that confusion there.
Okay, so that leaves us with the 232 million. So do we want to share? So I think we've converted all of these into Excel, right? And now we need to go through, I think we made a first attempt at 232 million. And we need to talk about that. I think we can do it, y'all, in 30 minutes. We need to talk about it. And I think for the Powhatan, just to go back to that one, it was like $3.2 million could have been what can be given to them for a match for it to potentially be, which is a substantial, about $10 million less than what the request was on originally, right?
So that was all, again, based on round 5 and all the round 5 assumptions and where it fell out in that process. So I don't know how good of a baseline it is given the pretty large changes to Smart Scale this time, but it's the only number we have as a basis right now.
Okay. I have Ms. Inman.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. So just based on the 232.2 million, I came and breaking it down by percentages that were previously used, I came up with 177 million for the highway category, 17.4 million for transit, 35 million for bike ped, and 2.8 million for studies. based on the percentages that we had. So if my
Yeah.
math is correct, that's the way the breakdown would be now and available for those buckets.
Yeah, and thanks, Amy, for bringing that up. I totally forgot about the buckets.
Yeah.
One of the things that I did note, I'm glad we got the same numbers, was that there wasn't 35 million worth of bike ped request. And so that would leave, additional dollars, which of course I would advocate to go to transit because it doesn't
agree.
have in the transit category.
Absolutely.
And then I think otherwise it's right. I'm not sure the layout. But then it becomes now incorporating kind of those broad guidelines, which is, open, which of our priorities fit into those and what does that look like? Barb?
I'm getting back to Powhatan. I feel an obligation to speak on their behalf. So the miles exercise showed 3.5, would have worked in the last round. I wouldn't want to shave it all the way back to that. That's not how Chesterfield is approaching it. We're going above and beyond to really increase our chances of getting the smart scale money. So,
No. I just said, I'm just looking at wiggle room, not definitely like cutting. Yeah, that's $10 million. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
And so can I just ask a clarifying question on that? I mean, that project, I'm very curious about that project personally, but, so was that submitted on this round or was this the last round?
They submitted it for smart scale last round. And
okay, and so they did not submit again. I'm sorry.
No, they did. It's on our list, Amy.
It is on our list. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it scored.
That's correct.
Yeah, and I think one of the things is, even if you look at the separation into the categories, and that's why I said we have to look at it based on the priorities, because clearly the consensus, which we can definitely try to yield that consensus if we don't have one, but is that there were projects, again, that didn't score well in that process. And now that we have this new amount of money, do we just continue to go down that scoring, which I don't think there's consensus on, or do we look at the priorities that we're all talking about and then make it fit within the dollars that we have, using as many the guidance that the finance committee gave us in knowing the priorities that everybody stated.
Yeah.
Mr. Ewer and then Ms. Inman.
I would say that I think we've identified a number of things that are going to need to go into the parking lot for us to go back and have discussion on framework coming up this summer. So there's a fun summer activity to look forward to. I noticed Chessa's not on the call, so Barbara will get to break the news to her on that, but I don't think that's a surprise. But for example, I'll pick the downtown transfer hub, since that's kind of obvious that got zero benefit points. So for us to go back and just kind of go down the list and pick what's next for the money, I think is not really the expectation that we heard from finance committee, and we all see some problems with that. So I think having this conversation with where the priorities are amongst the localities was very useful and productive. And the whole thing with kind of picking percentages off of the different categories, I understand why we did that originally, made sense, but that also creates problems because, for example, and I know we talked about moving some of the money from bike ped to transits. So there were only 3 transit projects submitted, right? So, the deck was kind of stacked against them of picking more than one, just based on the odds. So obviously Pulse Extension was second, and Downtown Transfer Center was third. So all those are great regional projects. So to limit us based on the framework policy of kind of categories by percentage submitted is concerning as well. So kind of further goes to the argument of I think we need to be careful on just following the framework and the rankings.
Thank you. Ms. Inman?
Oh, I was started doing my math here a little bit. So that means if we were to do that, and I guess I want to echo what Todd was saying. I think we were given clear directive to look at benefit and readiness. And in terms of the categories, I think it's a fair distribution, but I absolutely hear what you're saying in terms of the transit bucket sort of didn't necessarily reflect the need, right? So, but I think if we were to take the money, the remaining funding from the bike ped, the 35 million over into transit, that'd give you, the 23 million for transit from 11.3. I got that right. So that would increase, if everybody would be in agreement with that approach, that would increase the transit bucket. So that money wouldn't come back to highway or studies, it would go to transit.
What's the, let me see. God, I think we put in the leverage. So it was 10. Oh, wow. 8, 18.
Of course, that would only get it halfway funded. Can I just ask a question on the pulse extension, short pump extension? Where is that in terms of its project readiness? And are you putting that into Smart Scale, or is that going into an FTA program or some other funding program?
It's going into Smart Scale, and we'll also be working with TRTC for FTA programs. It's been through the initial study to basically identify the limits and number of stations, and now it's going into NEPA preliminary design. It's currently underway.
So it's probably not quite ready to get scored in, but for Smart Scale.
The expectation is it will score in for Smart Scale, but we don't know until we're there. So
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I think already I'm just looking, the minimum I think needs for the transit is like 25.5 million, I think. So that still doesn't really work for the categories.
The 23.4 doesn't get you there.
It's a little short.
Okay, well, why don't we put that, so your gap in the transit is 2 million, 2 or 3 million?
Yeah, but we would also probably need to look at the highway categories.
Yeah, so, right, but let's just put that as a kind of a side thing. So we're on the transit category. If this breakout were to be, we need about 25 in transit. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I think it's 25.5.
Okay, 25.5 in transit. So we're about 2 million. That's not bad, and gap.
And so I think we wanted to probably start. So we tried to do an exercise. Chet, did you ever get our table?
Yes, I don't know if it was, I don't know if it's the.
So I might make a
One.
recommendation. Darona.
Yes, ma'am.
I recommend that maybe we go back through and just, let's just be real about what everybody needs in terms of their project. I know you've been working on another scenario. I haven't seen that. I don't know if it's prudent to go down that road or not, since other people may or may not have had time to look at that. But in the interest of time, maybe if we went back down and just said, look, here's what we need for our projects. And if a project really doesn't need the funding right now, then we just need to be honest about that. I mean, I heard, I think Todd say that the Osborne Turnpike improvement, which he had requested $41 million, could really use PE money, if I heard that correctly. So I mean, that's, you know, a pretty big difference, right? PM money versus 41 million.
Yeah, I'll speak to that real quick, Amy.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's an important regional project, but and that was a calculated leverage amount, but I think in the spirit of trying to fairly allocate dollars, we'd be willing to be able to work with a lesser amount to get further through PE. Might hurt us this round of smart scale on the leverage side, but in the meantime, it advances the project. So I think that's an approach that we can take on all of our asks at this point, and hopefully everybody else could as well. And it's just a matter of matching up the numbers at that point.
Right. So that's an example. Thank you, Todd. I think that's a really fair way of approaching it.
Of course, I mean, we could ask the same thing about a number of other projects. And
Yeah. Oh yeah, I think that's just kind of what we need to do, is go down the list and say, do you need the money? And if so, what is the real number?
Okay, well, you want to start with you, Amy?
All right. I don't mind. So our ask was the 25 million. You know, we're not going to receive any of the other regional money. So this is most likely going to be what we have to leverage both smart scale and the private 12 million. I think we could probably go down to 20 and give in, you know, 5.
Okay, and it's specifically for the leveraging of the smart scale application.
Correct.
Mr. Ewer?
the question for Amy on that, what's the timing for Bucky's coming in when the interchange is actually?
Bucky's is planning to come in 27. That's their current time frame. So they're going to be making some modifications. We're going to have to construct another bridge and, you know, finish the diverging diamond. So that project is going to need to come online, you know, we're hoping in the, you know, 28, 29, 30 time frame if we can get this all to line up. Just basically because there's so much going on right now in that area. We've got 3 major projects happening, including making some modifications to the existing thing to get some improvements.
And the interchange is going to be screened into smart scale at this point?
Yes. Yeah, we've got the IAR ready. You know, we of course have the framework document. We'll have our design ready to go. We've been working with Federal Highway, VDOT, of course, and recently had meetings with VDOT, and I think they feel very comfortable with where we are. They've been intimately involved, of course, in the process. I spoke with Kinley Horn yesterday, and they're very confident that there's not, you know, we're not going to have any trouble finalizing the IAR and getting signatures prior to July 15th, which is the deadline. If we get this money, we're going to go ahead. We'll start in, you know, any environmental work that we can as soon as we can, get the design engineering for a design build project. The right of way isn't going to be terribly significant. So we don't think there will be any major holdups on that. So we pretty much, I mean, as ready as we have a project, this is a project that's not going to experience delays.
So I think this is a fair question, especially in light of some other developments in the region that have walked away. What happens if Bucky's doesn't come? What guarantees do you have?
Well, Bucky's is coming. They've already closed and I mean, they're moving ahead. It's not a deal that they're not coming. Bucky's has given their financial commitment. So they've provided that, commitment to us and in the spirit of, what they're doing. I don't think Bucky's is not going to open. I think they're full steam ahead in doing that.
But they haven't broken ground at this point.
They probably will be in a very short amount of time. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, they're closed on the property. It's been announced. Bucky's isn't one to, pull back. I know there have been other projects in the region recently that there was a hurry up and then the project, didn't maybe go forward the way it was intended. I don't know that I ever even heard who that project was, in terms of who it was. I think Bucky's has put themselves out there to say that they're coming. And I don't think that we're going to see them back out. I mean, I will tell you, if we can't get anything done, they're not going to open up, right? I mean, if we can't make some, things happen, and that's why I think the other piece of this is, it's imperative that we make these improvements. The other thing I'll mention is, we currently have the 780,000 square foot AutoZone that's ready to open up in January, and that's all truck traffic. There's going to be, we have a Love's and we have other truck stops right there at that interchange. It's going to be probably utilizing those gas stations. So the diesel tax will most likely increase. I don't have, an economic generator on that in terms of the dollar amount that we'll generate back, but just, knowing how much distribution is going to be coming into that area, the trucks are going to be stopping and purchasing their gas and, buying lunch and other things that are going to generate revenue for the region.
But again, that's out in what, 27, 28 at the earliest or sooner?
That one's coming in 25. Mm-hmm.
At the same interchange.
Yes. And the 1.4 million, it's in our plan review right now. And that's a 1.4 million square foot. It's Forge Logistics. I think we can all, think about who that might be. It's 100 bays of trucks coming in and out. I've asked the consultants who are working to provide us with what they think their operations is going to be. But I mean, with 100 bays, there's going to be significant truck traffic coming in and out of there. At all times of day and night. So I think that we're going to see a boost in the diesel sales, as well as just general sales tax that'll come back to the region.
Okay, Mr. Vadunas?
Real quickly, Amy, where is New Kent putting their local CVTA dollars?
Well, as other localities have kind of said to me, that's, those dollars are what, are for local projects. I asked that exact question. And I was told that locals have said, no, those monies are kind of their monies to allocate. But to tell you what we're doing with them, we have we have a roundabout, the 155 roundabout that's going to be getting constructed. We have other improvements that are needed on 249, again, to help with some development that we're anticipating coming in, current safety issues that those dollars are going towards. We also have, I think, maybe, possibly, the most rural rustic roads in the Commonwealth of Virginia, maybe outside of Loudoun County. But those roads right now have serious drainage issues and are needing improvement that the VDOT revenues just cannot manage. So we're working right now to try to figure out what is the cost to bring those rural rustic roads up to a reasonable, good state of repair, and what's it going to take to maintain them going forward. So we have, that's where we see those funds, sort of benefiting the rural locality.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Do we have any more questions for Amy?
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Amy. So I guess I could go to you next, Austin. The question is your minimum ask.
Yeah, we feel that on the two Route 288 projects, the auxiliary lane and the Route 250 interchange, they're pretty much where we feel they're going to be competitive, looking at the round 5 and then kind of taking into account what the round 6 scores are going to potentially do for those. There's a lot of access benefit to both of those projects, plus the economic development factor for just opening up Route 288 with the Capital One congestion and CarMax congestion we see in the rush hours, plus the congestion that we do see getting on eastbound 250 heading into Henrico County in the PM rush hour is quite significant. So those, I feel like we're kind of right there at the dollar amount that we feel will be successful. But we are on the Fairground Road, Maidens Road intersection improvements. I mean, we're happy in the spirit of regionalism to talk about surrendering those funds to better prioritize those for the region. But yeah, the Route 288 ones, I think, are kind of right where we want
them. Okay. So that was, I think I'm hearing, that's about 17.1 million almost.
The original asks would total 17.5. It was a $10 million request on the 250 interchange and then 7.5 on the auxiliary lane.
Okay.
So you're just needing the 7.5, Austin?
Yes.
Okay.
But there's two route. There's the Route 288 southbound auxiliary lane, and the Route 250 and Route 288 interchange improvements.
Right. So that's the two projects that I'm referencing. 7.5 on the auxiliary lane and then 10 on the interchange.
Oh.
Does that make sense? We all okay.
I don't know. I don't know if I had 7.5.
So in terms of, can I just ask a question?
Go ahead, Amy.
Okay, thank you. So when I look at that project, Austin, the 288 southbound auxiliary lane, and I believe me, I travel that, so I avoid that area at PM peak, so I get it. But it really had a low safety score in terms of its benefit. The mobility was fairly reasonable and access was fairly reasonable, but the safety, which is kind of counterintuitive.
Well, fortunately, Route 288, for all of its problems, is still relatively safe. It doesn't have a lot of wrecks in the Goochland County part of the corridor, which is a good thing. But we are looking at it's the mobility and getting folks in and out. The Route 288 STAR study that I think was circa 2018, 2020, kind of the projects came out of both. There was a short pump stars, Broad Street stars that came into Goochland and encompassed part of 288, then also a Route 288 STAR study that showed the backups and the out years of that study would be significant if we don't get the southbound improvements taken care of and those interchange improvements.
So you're not willing to reduce your ask? I mean, everybody's going to have to give something. We're all giving.
Well, I just gave up.
It'll be nice to say now. Pardon?
I just gave up $6.7 million.
Okay.
We're willing to surrender an entire project.
Okay.
All right.
Dorona, can I jump in really quickly just for staff clarification? We're just talking, Austin, when you said 7.5, we don't need to inflate, just 7.5, right?
Correct.
Okay, Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
are you,
leading into it, Goochland's assumption was always the leverage amounts for this application cycle wouldn't be leveraged. So that was just our game plan moving in, that we would take a flat dollar amount into Smart Scale.
Miles, have you kept up with the two localities?
Yes,
So-
I'm taking notes on what the totals are and which projects.
Me
Okay,
too.
Yeah, me too.
Mr. Ure?
I hate to keep going back to this, but to Austin's last question. Do we know which projects you've already calculated the leverage escalation for this round and what that amount is, and the submitter of those projects, if we could get concurrence, whether that escalation is needed or whether we could pare that back to the original ask, that kind of would help inform how much money we have to allocate.
Yeah, let me see if we can pull those calculations really quickly.
And we can keep working through this in the meantime, I think, so that for consideration of time, and you could just get back to us, Miles.
Yeah, that's perfect. I can work on that.
Thanks.
Miles, isn't that in the public materials?
Yeah, yes. So that's the public materials table where it shows the ask and then it shows the expected funding that was in there. So that gap would be the inflation that was applied based on putting it into an out year somewhere.
And all the leveraging projects are labeled as such.
Let me go back to Powhatan. So Barb,
Yeah,
Powhatan, the request, I think is 10 million or 13 million.
yeah, they requested 13,237 for 6013. They are willing to drop that for leveraging and smart scale. Miles, based on last round, 3.5 looked good last round. I wouldn't, I mean,
Can we do 5 or 6?
So, Madam Chair, may I just,
Yes, Ms. Inman.
okay. So this is a very low benefit. And if we've been given the direction to look at the benefit, this project, I don't think is ranking. I mean, I'm not saying we don't have it, give it money, but should we be looking at projects first that had the higher benefit, discuss those projects, and then come back? Because otherwise we're just going to be scoring, we're not really going to be keeping in consistent with what the finance committee asked us to look at.
I think, well, yeah, I mean, we can certainly look at benefit first, and then come back to this to try to
Yeah.
figure out a number.
Right. That's what I would recommend, because
But I think
that
there's
project
also,
have serious questions.
I think there's also a desire to kind of look at regional balance.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, we can put that on the back burner.
Okay, so right now they would be allocated 0.
Why don't we just come back to them and not say they're 0 yet?
Okay.
So I would say Henrico's next, right, with their benefit of, their benefit score was number 1.
Yeah, so we can go to Henrico.
Okay, yeah, so short pump was a high benefit, but as I mentioned earlier, we're willing to take that leverage amount down. We've done some internal calculations on where we can move other levers. So if we're comfortable getting down to 60 million ask and out of the 75 on that one.
60?
Yes.
So that's more than half.
More than half of what?
Well,
I'm just trying to find them.
The original request was 75.
So yeah, that's 15 million.
Out of a $285 million project.
Okay, I see it. All right, so that's 60. And then, but you have other projects, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Madam Chair, can I interrupt real quick? Just making sure, looking at the time, I want to make sure everybody is available to stay on for this pretty important discussion. Just trying to be a good timekeeper. Sorry.
No, thank you, because we don't want people to drop off and then we don't have a quorum.
Yeah, I was really hoping we'd be able to wrap up by noon. That seems impossible.
4 minutes till noon. I'm sorry.
So,
Yeah,
Madam,
Miles.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. I just wanted to give the information from those public score sheets for the inflation. So in total, if you look at projects that were just requesting leveraging and then the inflation added on top of the original request, and then also there were 2 City of Richmond projects that were existing projects that had existing estimates where we added inflation on top of those as well. It was $23.9 million that could be freed up by removing the inflationary impacts on all of those.
What?
You're good. Yeah, she called me.
Oh, who's on? Wow. So Todd has his hand up.
sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair. So let's kind of jump to what we need to have ready to go to the full authority for next Friday and what we need to do to get there. I think at this pace, we're going to be here for another hour or two. I know this is important, but I don't think everybody has that availability. And we have a lot of different numbers floating around between, the inflation number that Miles just gave. So I guess my question back to you, Madam Chair, and the group is how do we get to what we need prior to the next Friday?
No, I totally agree, but I think my point, I have a question in regard to with what Miles is saying, Chet. Is that an additional 23.9 million to the 232 million?
I mean, obviously, I trust what Miles is saying, but we would want to verify that. But that's the inflationary numbers are what is included in the public review documents under the expected award. So if we were going to be reducing that leveraging ask to the current dollar amount, then yes, but I think the assumption is that will be in addition,
So
an additional amount.
I think, yeah, so it wouldn't be in addition to the 232. So, the 232 was assuming the entire 151 was taken out from projects where we had put projects in the original scenario and using that as saying all that's free plus the extra fiscal year and taking out the working capital reserve. So it was the 151 plus the 80 that came from those 2 changes that got us to the 232. All this would do would basically say if we pick those same set of projects and we took out inflation, we would free up 20 million that could then go to another project or another set of projects. But it sounds like
okay, I get it. But it still is another 20 million. So you're just saying that it's within the 230. I'm still confused a little bit.
So I think the best way to think of it would be if we kept the original staff recommended scenario that just tried to strictly follow the framework document, we'd have that $23 million in additional if we took out all the additional inflation that was applied to any of those leveraging requests. We'd have that additional money to be able to pick the next project on the list in that scenario. If we're just looking at the 232, it doesn't do anything to change the 232 budget because we're pulling all the projects for the 232.
You're adjusting down the cost estimates for a handful of the projects. So it frees up part of that 232 that was previously assumed to be committed.
That is helpful though. So that means that the spreadsheet then that you should be compiling with the dollar amounts, Miles, should just have the leverage amount request. And then we should still see it potentially go farther because those have been leveled off.
Correct. So we would see probably another project or two.
So again, I think that we had what New Kent, Goochland, Wilson, and Ashland's at their, but Ashland probably has a low benefit score, but for the sake of regionalism, so we can skip that one for now. And then Richmond, I think our total requests are about 46 million, 46.7 million. And I can particularly go through each project if you want, Miles, but that's where Richmond is. Henrico, like I said, I heard the 60, and then probably you said the east-west too, and the east-west.
So yeah, of the four that we need leverage money on, we can reduce all of them to a number. I'm comfortable saying 60 for short pump, something less for both Route 5 to focus on PE, for pulse extension, a lesser leverage number, and as well as for the Route 60 roundabout. So I can work on the math of that, but I don't know if I can.
Well,
but for today,
and remember, we're sticking within our buckets, I think, right? So the buckets of money, it's not, I mean, we're sticking with those.
Yeah, so the round number, yeah, I think your round number ask is I hear you, but I don't know. So is it like 76 million?
76 plus or minus. I guess we still need to do the math on the escalation on any of the leverage that's still factored in here for projects that are that localities don't want to switch out. So that's kind of a missing piece as we sit here.
So Miles, if you have like the entire project list, can you then like individually through the lines subtract out the inflation where applicable to then make a proposed total amount?
Yes, so we can do that. So the adjusted request amount that's in that document is the uninflated number. So we can easily sum those up for all the projects without inflation for anything that was requesting leveraging and not full funding.
But
I think at the end of the day, we still essentially we have to get to 232. So if that's the extra year in the approach that we're taking, then we can add up to 232 and we can pull those out, but it's not going to get us very far without guidance on which ones you want us to take. Because I mean, if we look at just benefit or we look at just cost or we look at our cost benefit scenario, it doesn't get us very far. I think that's where we need the TAC to tell us which projects.
Can you put up these CVT this CVT, but the spreadsheet on it so we can be at the numbers so we can get to 232?
So right now we're at 158.
Thanks, Amy.
Well, and I think this escalation thing I think is going to be hard to manage. Could we get to where people are with their number and then come back to look at that?
Yeah. I mean, I just think that is going to.
I mean, I know we got to account for it.
But I want an Excel spreadsheet Like, I don't want a PDF.
So
Right.
I guess what I'm saying though, I think the expected award, the request difference, it really doesn't matter if we're not starting from the same basis. If we're not starting with the same set of projects that we started with originally, that money
Yeah.
doesn't, it's not actually getting freed up.
That's
It's
fine.
only,
That's fine. I just want to know, like, that request dollar, I want to be able to edit these request dollars so we can get to 232.
We're at 158 right now.
Yeah, and so we need this
Oh.
in Excel so that we can put the 20 at Newkins project. We can put the 60 at Henrico's.
Well, Henrico's up to 76. And I don't know where they are. If
Well, that's why I want to see
76
the project list so we can see where that other money is. Where's that other 16,000?
I mean,
Million.
is that in the, was that in the transit?
I think it's
Was that
transit.
including
and he said
transit?
Another project, yeah.
It's transit, it's Route 5, and it was Bueller 60 roundabout.
Okay. So that takes care of transit and highway.
The transit number that we think we can work with for leverage is about 8 million. The original ask was 14, almost 15. It's almost cutting that in half.
Do we have an Excel spreadsheet?
So the 158 was including your 46.7, Dirona.
Okay, thank you.
So can we move on to who's left? We've got New Kent, Goochland,
We got
Henrico,
Hanover
Richmond,
and Chesterfield, yeah.
Chesterfield, and Hanover. Okay.
I don't think we can push this quickly. I mean, we know part of what Henrico's requests are, but I mean, I also I would go back to Todd's question earlier about where are we trying to end up today?
With
Is
a
there
funding-
work that needs to be done?
With a
Is
list
there
of
work that
projects.
still- Is there work that still needs to be done locally before we can have a TAC direction? Or is
That should have
everybody
already
ready to
happened.
do this?
Yeah.
So then can we, Madam Chair, if it's okay with you, can we go through each jurisdiction like we started and have the
But if we could
adjusted
put,
request shared?
yes, but if we could
that's what we're doing.
put a list of the projects up with the requested dollar amount and then a proposed, because that is where people are reducing their lines, which will be what will add up to whether or not we are at 232 or not, and on which projects.
So Henrico knows which projects they're putting theirs on. Dirona, you know what projects you're putting
Exactly.
yours on.
I
You can
do.
give Chet that list of projects, right? So we don't have to go through project by project.
okay.
Well, we want to get to where we all see the scenario.
Okay.
So this is the original, this is the public document, and I had to make a new copy so you guys can see it.
Thank you.
That's the original. And then as we go through it, I guess what you're asking is to change this expected award column to see
Yes.
what adds up to the 232.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Am I up first? What is the first one? No.
Well, let me go back and try and get the adjustments for the ones that the numbers we penciled in total.
Okay, thank you.
And Todd, can you go back and the additional projects? So New Osborne was
Yeah, New Osborne Route 5, original ask was
41.
41, the revised ask. And that wasn't in the recommended funding scenario, so there's no escalation considerations for it. Revised ask for PE would be 4 million.
Okay. And then
And you captured pulse extension at
that
8.
was 8.
Okay. Okay, so the only other one we had, because we're gonna wipe all the other projects that were recommended and just replace that with local funding. So all
Beulah.
goes back, so yeah, the only one left would be Beulah, and the recommendation for that, or that we can backfill with local money to fully fund would be 4 million.
Okay, and then Austin's will adjust both of those. Okay. I think I'm caught up to where everyone is.
All right, you want to do Richmond Miles?
Sure. We can just work down the list. So Hull Street shared use path. This one was slightly inflated, and it's an actual existing project with $3 million of local match on it that was filling.
Yes, I think that one needs to keep the inflation, right?
Well, it looks like that's replacing local commitment and funds a deficit. Are we in the practice of replacing local commitment on projects?
I think it's with the rules, but I think we can, that one with the inflation. Yeah, that one can be the 3.1. Thank you.
Then the next one, this had an $18 million deficit from the local estimate. So this is an existing smart scale project. And then from the review process and putting it into the updated cube, it actually wound up at 20.4. But the 18 was the original ask based on, again, it's an existing smart scale project.
Okay, yeah, that ask it's down to 5 million.
Okay, and then Commerce 2, this is leveraging. So it sounds like we're adjusting all of those just back to the original leverage, or is that?
Hold on, let me get it on my, this is Commerce Road Phase 2. Reduce the request to 8 million.
Okay. The next Richmond one is the Port of Virginia Gateway, the roundabout in Walmsley and Commerce.
And so that one, that has the inflation in it. I know we have Ms. Nelson on. What's the time frame on that? Because I had it at the 8491, but that's without the inflation, right? Is
Right.
Ms. Nelson left us?
She's still here.
I'm here.
Oh, what I'm trying to
miss this fun for the world.
we're trying to see if the 8.491 works or the inflation. What's the project schedule?
In a recent conversation with VDOT on the IAR for the interchange, that's I think we're at an add date that's a few years out, probably add date 2030 or so.
So beyond. So can we take that project out, Barb?
Oh, no, I'd leave it in, definitely. And because we're working to accelerate that, we think the actual time frame could be something closer to 2027. So, but we'll know more probably within the next 30, 60, 90 days. So I would definitely leave it in.
And so that one is a leveraging only. And so the leverage is, I mean, I think it could be the 8.49.
Yeah. I mean, you're the one putting it in, Tyrona. It's your ask.
No. And that's why I'm just still trying to make sure, Barb, but you would be still straight with what the original leverage amount was going to be, not the original 11 million, but the 8.4 without the inflation.
Yeah, we support the city's calculation.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, what else I have? That one needs to stay in its leveraging, so you can bring it back down to my other one. This is,
You said Forest Hill, we could zero out, I think
yes,
earlier.
don't
Okay.
say it out loud. My people are gonna kill me.
That project is, oof.
And then north-south BRT, are we adjusting that one down?
Yeah, let me see, north-south. I think the north-south is the 10% of the 100 million, so it's 10 million. And then the last one, yeah, after talking with GRTC, that could be reduced to 7.5 million. And that should
Okay.
equate to my 40, whatever,
Um,
46.7.
so what do we want to do next?
Chesterfield,
Okay. Are we focusing on highway?
We're going through all the projects, so we're just
Your
working our way
first
through
one
the
is
whole
the
list and then
Fall
Okay.
Line Trail gaps.
Yeah, no change there. Busy Street, we're happy with the 5.511 number.
Midlothian Village.
So hold on, Barb, did you say that fall line should stay at 0?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
20 for this one, 2852,116.
Uh, 288,
That can stay.
Poet Extended,
30. That's our priority.
Okay, so where are we at this point?
Even at
uh,
0.
224.
Hmm?
We're at 224,
Okay.
Huguenot,
0.
and 360 wide.
360, 10, 75.
And the Bellwood connector. I think,
Yeah, go ahead. Oh, Bellwood, no, you can take,
okay.
yeah, nothing on that.
I think
That's it.
that's it for
I
Chesterfield.
think Goochland.
We've already
think-
got Goochland.
Yeah, I think
Okay, good.
Hanover.
Hanover.
You're on mute. Joe.
Thank you. Line 26, row 26, we'll keep that at 10.54 as shown. And then
Zero out the
15 for the other one. And I do want to, I know we're trying to get through this, but I just feel the need to make a couple comments about this. So number one, Hanover's the biggest donor in this exercise, and that's okay. But I just want to make that point. I'd also remind everybody that in round one, when we were going through this, remember the Fall Line Trail was fully funded or funded to the tune of 100 million, and we did distribute monies to 4 of the royals. I think Goochland got 2 projects, New Kent, Powhatan, and Charles City also got funded as well out of this regional pot. So, you know, when we talk about equity, it does go both ways. And I feel pretty committed to my position on these 2 projects. Thank you.
So where are we now?
Before we move to that, Madam Chair, I think I may have skipped the I-95 Parham project. If Mr. York could weigh in.
We zeroed that out. That was some of the money we wanted to move to the other projects. That's still important, but we'll cover it elsewhere.
We're at
So-
241.
Yeah, 241. I was just double checking to make sure that's.
And what about Ashland? Did we do Ashland and then the Powhatan? Where were those two at?
Neither of those have anything on them yet because we put them on hold.
Oh, Lord, it was still over.
We would love a little bit just to have something extra for our smart scale application for leveraging. We're putting a little bit of our local funds on it. I think 50,000. Again, we only get 300 a year, but so if we could get a little bit to go towards leveraging, we would appreciate that.
Madam Chair,
Yes. Yes,
to
please.
to Nora's point, and Joe's point before that, Hanover is just by virtue of not having a lot of projects ready to submit this round, is being very generous in donating to the regional pot. But this project in Ashland is, and I'm familiar because I live in the area, benefits Hanover probably as much or more so than Ashland. So I would advocate for, a decent amount of leveraging money for that project for the benefit of the region and of those localities.
We're at 11 million remaining.
So can we just put in the request amount? I mean, that's pretty minor. I do know we're over, but
And then, what was it, Powhatan?
They get 8.4 is what's remaining if my math is correct.
I was thinking for Powhatan, 7. Miles's number was 3.5, doubling that to 7. And I can reduce that Powhite number by $1 million to 29. I know that's not much, but
How much are we over now?
So we're at
did I say
250.
Barb, did you want the 7 on the
Right at
13?
252.
7 for Powhatan on 6013?
Right.
And then
Yeah, that was the
Powhite
other one.
can
I put it
go
in the wrong
down
one.
and then Powhite can go down $1 million. There it is.
In the spirit of giving, Henrico can probably take $1 million off our Route 5. Take that. I think we had 7. We can go down to 6 and still get most of the way through PE, hopefully.
We had
No, we're at 4.
Yeah.
No, don't do that. Go to Bueller, Route 60. Take that down to 3.
So we're still 17 over about.
Henrico will note that we're based on this round and previous rounds net donors to the regional pot at this point.
And what's the delta?
So we're at 249, just under 249.5, and our available was
232.
232. I can't remember the.
All right, what are our next steps? We are still over.
So do we want to go through the, I guess, the buckets and see what buckets were over their original amounts and where that falls out?
So I guess, would you
'Cause
just
I
talk
mean-
about totaling the categories again? So like
Well-
how much money is going to highway projects?
That's, yeah, if Miles could give us the breakdown now of where we are on the categories.
Yeah, let me put that into percentages really quickly. Okay, so highway is at 83%,
What is the number?
207.1.
Okay.
Bike ped is at 16,152, and that is 6%. The PE only is at 715,000, and transit is at 25.5.
So the highway bucket is over the most.
Madam Chair, I mean,
And other buckets are under.
yeah, I was gonna
right.
say, I don't think the bucket exercise is really gonna be productive for this exercise.
Ditto.
I mean, I don't know how else. I mean, I think it did what it was supposed to. The bike ped kind of contributed over to the transit, so that equaled out. Right? The studies, I think, is contributing up probably to the highway bucket. So it looks to me like based on the asks, the highway bucket is the one that's over the most.
But that's where the additional money is needed, so.
Oh, okay. I'm just saying that's. Okay.
Madam Chair, could I ask a question?
Yes,
So
sir.
where are we with the Powhatan request? Did we put any funding on that?
Barb said 7 million.
Okay.
And do we know where that one is in terms of project readiness?
No, all I know is they submitted it last time in Smart Scale, so it met readiness last round,
That doesn't mean it's going to meet readiness this round.
and I suspect that they've not done any PE. I
I
don't
guess
think
my
it's a project, it's an intersection project, so
Yeah,
I don't think that it has the readiness requirements like an interchange would.
right. Well,
So-
let's have, maybe Mark could weigh in on that if he knows anything about that project. Or maybe somebody, VDOT might have more insight if they've done any work. I mean, my
Maybe
concern
Sarah?
is they haven't participated, in these meetings at all, and I just wonder, what are they doing, with the project?
Well, I think they're pretty short-staffed at the moment.
Well, and that's my point, is if they can't attend the meetings, do they have time to even work on the project?
They're asking for one project.
I'm not saying not give it to them. I'm just, in fairness to everybody else and what we're looking at in terms of project readiness. Is it ready,
Yeah, I would like VDOT to weigh in, so
Yeah,
Mark
I
or
think
Sarah
VDOT
needs to
tell us
help
where
us
it
with
is.
that question.
Right. I mean, I live there, so I'm not saying don't give them the money. I'm just saying, is the project ready?
I have no concerns about readiness for round 6 for that project.
Okay.
Great.
And even if there were some last T's crossed and I's to that, we've got till July 15th to do that. So similar to other projects that have some work to do, or potentially, we do have time. So
Okay. That's fair.
All right, so we, let's see. So I guess some we have to get these numbers down, and we have to think about the ask that we're given, and VDOT, do we have any extra input on the 64 project? Was it coming in like on cost or whatnot? Because that was a big chunk of dollars there.
64 new count.
Yeah.
So the process for smart scale, the cost estimates and everything will certainly be validated at that time. We have no indication at this point that that is an order of magnitude cost that is inappropriate. I think, it's fine for this discussion right now. But the validation of that estimate won't be until later this summer.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, Madam Chair, another one on here. East Perham Road improvements in Henrico was 2.5. That was just for leveraging, Todd. Was that supposed to be zeroed out, or is that supposed to be 2.5?
That gets zeroed out.
Okay, well, that frees up 3 something out of what we needed. So we're down to 13.9.
Goochland County is willing to consider taking the interchange at 250 and 288 down to 7.5. Just kind of running some back of the napkin math real quick. So it's line 15. Yeah.
The 11.4.
I think I'm at the bear with my hubs. I think the minimum could have been 6.5, but let me look at my. There's the 2.5.
So that was a project that wasn't originally funded. 7.5.
Yeah. That one wasn't. Yep. But we removed the whole Forest Hill, which was funded at 10 million.
Right.
Madam Chair, could I ask, I guess, Miles, are you driving still?
Yes, I am.
Can you scroll slowly top to bottom or bottom to top, so we can
Sure.
gauge everything that's on there?
Yeah, just let me know when you want me to move down.
You can go kind of slowly, keep rolling.
Amy, is 20 your minimum?
Yep. We've already come down 5.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
if I can point out to the group, and Amy, I know you weren't here during the initial, actually for the last round 2 or 1 of the CVTA regional, but the 100 million request from New Kent, that with the 64 widening is really what's thrown off our allocations for all these years, because we had it pretty much every project that had been requested on cycle for round two was funded to some degree, kind of like the exercise we're going through now. And then the 64 requests came in and was kind of not really off cycle, but came in at the end of the round two allocations, and that's kind of what because we're still doing PEGA, that's what staff at CVTA had to kind of allocate out across all the way through like FY 29 into 30, just to cover that 100 million that was on top of the 282 or whatever the round two allocation was. So that was a huge impact to the region.
I understand it's a major regional project, and I'll just refer you back to the secretary on that. I know Ms. Page was a big advocate for it, but you know, I might be better served to have that conversation with the secretary and VDOT, because I don't think we're the ones that really actually got it over the line. You might want to have that conversation with them.
No conversations necessary. We're
Okay.
aware that secretary was and the commissioner were advocating for it, but it was a new camp project that from the origin of CVTA back in mid 2020 was the single and loud request from New Kent prior to the secretary being in office. So it was a New Kent project as
Yeah,
well.
I'm not going to make any comments, but I will say the Fall Line Trail has, you know, dedicated quite a bit of money as well. So, you know, I think if it wasn't regionally worthy of the money, I think that the region would not have put that money on that project, independent of the secretary or Ms. Page. So I think the project stands in and of itself in terms of its benefit back. And that's, you know, I guess that's my only comment on it. But thank you all. I mean, I understand that was a hard conversation. I wasn't here for that. You're right, Todd, but that's how I understand it.
Yeah, and so just, you know, we don't really keep tabs, but we do look at like where millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars are going, and who made the request. So just thanks for the conversation about that, and that you know, as we just looking at these rounds and spreading the dollars out, you know, we're just trying to take that in consideration. There's no one attack on any one person's project. Mr. Going?
Yeah, thank you. Just in the spirit of regionalism, would Richmond consider dropping the wild card application, considering it wasn't traditionally eligible?
What?
I think 3 million. I know Goochland's willing to drop our wild card, knowing it's not a traditionally eligible project. It was just something I wanted to throw out there.
Yeah, and is that the I think my group told me I could not. Let me see. I have 2 Hall Street. Yeah, but that's still, even if I can look at some additional but that's still going to leave us 10 million short.
Yeah, I know. Just thinking about if we move forward with no wild cards at all, just kind of what the message of that sense. I know it's a priority from Richmond's standpoint, and the benefit score was, I think, 8th overall out of all the projects put together.
Yeah, are those the 2 last? Were we the 2 wild cards that were in there, or are there other wild cards?
There were only 2 that were proposed to be funded, and it was that one plus mine, the Fairground Road roundabout, which we have dropped.
But there's still other wild cards getting funded in this scenario, right?
There may
Yes,
be now.
there are now. So the Route 5 New Osborne is a wild card. So
Okay.
yeah, we're shifting to some new ones maybe picked up.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't aware of that. Thank you.
Yeah, and regarding the Route 5 New Osborne, we've essentially reduced that to a PE only project at this point, from 41 million down to the 4 or whatever it was.
I need it. Let's see. So Richmond is looking at some reductions. I'm trying to get through it, but we need somebody else. We need somebody else. Um, sorry, I'm trying to call. So oh yeah, but I think the other funding opportunities across the region for the fall line, I don't think those projects of ours are making the list. So then they don't have another funding source. Yeah, I just think that it's 12:42 and everybody's at like a standstill and we're still like 13 million short. So either we're gonna 11 million.
Hey, Dorona,
Yes, Barb.
speaking of fall line, you know, when we had our CMAC RSTP meeting the other day, we kind of touched on how when you are comparing those bike ped projects with the highway projects, the bike ped can't compete. Kind of this apples and oranges problem that we have been trying to avoid here. And, you know, we agreed that over the summer we would be evaluating scoring for CMAC RSTP. That might be an opportunity, you know, to kind of look at how we can get bike ped projects funded because they really don't fit into other funding sources. They don't compete well.
Yeah. Could you go back up for me, Miles? Thanks. So really, I mean, there's the big chunks that Chesterfield and Henrico has, and then New Kent. Those are like our biggest chunks. And I know when you're looking at complete project cost and what you're trying to achieve, you know, it just becomes important because it's, you know, 300 million and you're getting 10% of it. So, if we looked at kind of like that 10% of the total project cost, does that chop down or what does that do?
There's also a consideration to readiness and not the smart scale readiness as much as where is the project in the process? You know, so for Powhite, we're firmly in the design phase for that project, you know, and it's funded with, it's got CVTA local on it. And this additional money will help bring it to construction. So it's moving along, you know, we're not in a study. We're working on that project.
Gotcha. All right, we need some givers. Like I said, Richmond is we're up, but I want somebody else first. Mr. Ure, you turn your mic on.
Yeah, but I didn't say anything, did I? No, I mean, we've done the math pretty hard on the short pump. And you know, we're concurrently working on right away. While we're going through the NEPA process, we've already committed several $1 million in local money to get it to the point where it is. VDOT's committed money to it, and you know, it's moving quickly. We're going to do it as design build once we get through NEPA. So and so, you know, the money we're asking for is the money that we need on top of the money that the county's already committed and will commit to a significant tune. So this gets us the smart scale piece of it potentially.
Amy, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Under what parameters has Bucky's promised those funds? Is it upon you get the $12 million check tomorrow? Is it already in the bank, or is it upon a certain phase of the project?
It's upon getting leverage money.
Upon this discussion or smart scale?
Correct, both. So, and I guess I'll say, just maybe going back to the project readiness, maybe that's where we need to go, you know, projects that aren't, or I'm sorry, the benefit, right? So we were asked to look at funding projects that had, you know, higher benefit. Maybe we need to go back to the projects that don't have quite the benefit and see where they are in terms of their funding. I mean, that maybe gets us to the next round of scaling back. Because I think the projects that have the higher benefit, it sounds to me like are ready to go and are probably going to leverage in.
Amy, I would ask New Kent to consider a PE only or a NEPA ask, because I think that's still a successful leverage at this point.
No, we're already there. We already have that. So I don't think we can scale back any more than we already have. Let's look at the other projects. And again, I really think that, you know, the benefit is what we were asked to look at. I mean, we have a couple of projects here that haven't reduced at all in Chesterfield. And then I guess I would just question the project again in Powhatan. It was one of the lowest scoring benefit ranking projects. So I would ask that other people kind of look to reduce maybe on projects that haven't been reduced yet and see where we are.
But if we look at, I think, the overall number of projects submitted and then the priorities, I think that when people have taken out whole projects off of the list, I mean, that they're showing that they are, you know, those amounts go back into the pot per se, or available for someone else to program. And among the benefit to the region, it was like, you know, other localities support. So we want to make sure that because we're going to get to where it's going to be like the hard line, because this meeting can't go on forever. And it's going to be either vote decision making, which we don't want per se, or it's gonna be we get it in the next 5 minutes. Barb?
Oh, I wanted to get back to what Amy said. So in the process, you said you're through NEPA?
So we will be entering into it, but the NEPA is going to be very straightforward on this. It's an existing interchange where it's going to be very minimal impacts.
Yeah, right.
I
but
mean,
you
let's
gotta
just,
get
I'm
FHWA.
not,
I'm
okay, I
just trying
understand.
to figure out
We're not gonna
timeline.
balance out the 11 million or whatever is remaining on our project. So if
I
that's what
don't
you're
think
thinking,
anybody's gonna do it on their own,
okay, but I mean,
but I just wanna understand timeline.
we will be ready to move forward with our project. We need to get this money. We need to see where we are. I guess where are other projects in terms of that have received funding previously that aren't moving forward? Do we have projects, I mean, in terms of freeing up additional dollars for projects that we know are there previous projects that were allocated money that are not moving forward now, that have big pots of money on them?
We've
The
just
projects.
we've been through the smart scale process before where we felt confident about readiness and then
Mhm.
have not met it. And Powhite is the perfect example.
Mhm. Well, I mean, you
Which
can
is
ask.
why we're funding it in another way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, our project is ready. I don't have any concerns with our project moving forward into smart scale, being screened in and moving forward. We've had lots
And
of
I think
conversations.
VDOT has confirmed that, right?
Yeah. I mean, and Sarah, we've had lots of conversations.
Yep. So I can say from VDOT's perspective, there's been a tremendous amount of work done with Kimley Horn, New Kent, and the Bucky's folks at this point. Has the finish line been crossed yet for the readiness tasks that are due by July 15th? No, but with the work that has been done at this point, that is certainly a very achievable goal. So we don't have a red flag at this point that readiness can't be met. But technically, is it satisfied today? No. But to Amy's point, she just said, yep, we're working. We've done a lot of work so far and anticipate being able to meet that July 15th deadline. So we have nothing that would be counter to that.
Mr. Ewer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I know this question came up earlier, Amy, but has New Kent put any of the CVTA local money that they have on this project?
So just as we've asked you guys that money is for local projects. That's our money to talk about on other things. So I guess I would ask you that on your projects. Where are
We have
you?
CVT local on Powhite.
Okay.
We have
And I'm not saying that we won't. Probably most likely we're going to have to, because the money that we asked for out of the RTPO money is not going to be programmed onto this. So most likely we are going to have to put our local money onto that. But what amount at this point we're still working, but we don't have millions and millions of dollars. I mean, we have a couple of million, right? We haven't received. So I guess what I'm saying is, if you're thinking we have like $20 million somewhere, we don't. So we most likely will be putting some of our local money on it. I'm not saying that we won't, but I guess I'm getting a little bit, I guess I'm done with answering the questions. I don't know why you're focusing on our project like you are. I would like to focus back on your all's project if I don't want to get into that. But we've come down 5 million from where we were. Okay, so if other people want to come down and we want to talk about the Powhatan project, again, they're not here. We don't know. Barb, you're representing Powhatan, I guess, but that was a low project benefit. We had scored number 4 in terms of the benefit. And that's what we were asked to look at from the committee, from the finance committee. And I feel like we've met that on our project.
Thank you. And I think, again, I would say that, again, for the 5 million, and not to pick on Amy, on the 5 million reduction, and looking at, different scenarios, again, there's probably tens of millions of dollars that each of us have put into the pot to try to stretch it amongst as many projects as we can. So again, I just said we should look at some of the bigger pots with the 11 million. I mean, at this point, it's like, where can we take almost like $10 million off of a project. And so again, and there's not many projects on the list that are even over that threshold. And I guess some of what it's really like we need to think about at the minimum of any of our key projects, and considering the bonding potential in the future. Does that like help with any of that reduction? So for an example, that's what we were thinking in regard to the north-south, is that, there's not a large amount of dollar amount that should be requested, even though we need it, because potentially in a bonding scenario, maybe that project could be leveraged that way. But meanwhile, while there are the other processes to be able to leverage. So that's all that we're asking. Is there places in any of these projects in which you just won't utilize the dollars? I don't think that, the CVTA round and cycles potentially can be used as, the one-all that is going to make and break projects. I think all of our localities experience economic development projects that everybody's moving dollars, trying to do this to make sure they work, and then lo and behold, they don't, or they do. So again, if we are hoping that they do, are there, we see the importance to Bucky's, to New Kent, but what are our leveraging amounts? Are there, VDOT dollars outside of the smart scale process? Like, how can we, and for all of these, I know you have your financial, your plan in order, your scenarios in order for things to happen. But, is are we going to be able, we won't be able to solve everybody's economic development, issues across the region, but is there like minimal input that we can do to say that the region is supporting it? A lot of times, when we are leveraging, not taking on all of the entire debt of the project is something they do, like the leveraging. So again, we have 1 minute until 1 o'clock. And there's going to be one or two things. It's going to be, I think our job is to be at 2:32. And so we're going to have to make the hard decision technically on what and how and what we're going to reduce. Because, and in some cases, the numbers that people have, you'll either be asked to take the reduced amount or not at all, because we have to get to 2:32. There's no other way around it. Mr. Ure.
Madam Chair, what is the delta at the moment?
11,044,000.
11.4. What's the current number shown for the Powhatan project?
7.5 or 7 million.
All right, with Barb as their proxy, I think we heard that it was about a $3.5 million recommendation based on Miles's analysis from last round. So maybe we can take $1 2 million off of that possibly.
Should be 5 million. That's just don't change it. Oop, don't change it yet.
I want Barb's feedback on that.
I mean, I guess we can do that. I'll feel really bad if they don't get their money in Smart Scale.
Well, I guess if they're not here. So,
But I will say that to that point, when New Kent received the 100 million, they didn't have a TAC member.
right.
And so we're not
Well,
doing it
and
because we
again,
need-
that you guys keep coming back to that, and I will tell you that New Kent, we have had no input in terms of the design, in terms of the project, the selection of any of the contractors. We've had no input. I think we've been attending some safety meetings. That is not a New Kent project. If it was a New Kent project, we would have put it out to bid. We would have been integrated into that project. We have not. Okay, other than, some little meetings with the safety. So,
I don't think VDOT would have let you anyway, because they're
well,
taking
exactly. I mean,
over
it's not
primaries and
exactly.
interstates.
It's not our project. It's not a New Kent project. So it was a state funded project that we did not apply for Smart Scale for that. We did not apply for any additional funding for that. This was something that, that VDOT had to get done. So please stop putting that off onto New Kent. And I would ask you to go talk to the secretary's office if you have any questions about that.
So what's our balance right now?
11.4 is what we are over, potentially down to 9.4 if 2 million comes off of Powhatan.
If that 2 million comes off of Powhatan, could every project over 10 million absorb a 1.5 loss? Because that's 9 million.
Yeah, that's sort of what I was thinking, is that
And there's 400,000 to find.
between Chesterfield, Richmond, Henrico, and New Kent, chopping off 2.35.
Well, I was looking at every project over 10 million, which I think it's 6 of them. Based off the most recent estimates, at 1.5 each is 9. So then we just need 400,000 plus the assumed Powhatan.
Get it, Austin.
Well, I think that there are some leveraging projects that
Right. Well, that was just an open-ended question. Can those projects absorb
Maybe-
that 0.5?
Or maybe that much out of each of those localities, you pick where. And sorry, Amy, yours is just be your one.
Well, but look at total amount, right? So, I mean, Richmond, you've got 46 million, right? So are you saying that none of your projects would, I don't know where the 10 million is the magic number, but
No, the out of that 46 million, I would have to take, what is it, Austin, 1 point, or at least maybe either Barb's way at 2 point some million or Austin's way, looking at whatever amount of projects over 10 million are in your county.
Yeah, it's either 1.5 per big project, so anything over 10 million, or 2.35, whatever the math works out to, per those 4 counties. That's, I guess it's 6 of
I
one, half
can't
dozen of
take
the other.
2.5 million off. I mean, we can probably do a million.
2.35, but
Okay.
And
I
we,
think it's,
if other localities are willing to do the 1.5, I mean, that's a bigger percentage off, right, of our total. So I think for people that get $60 million, 70 some million dollars, that's a much smaller percentage of their overall bucket than, us being asked to take a bigger percentage off of ours. So I guess I would push back a little bit on that.
Yeah, I would say if we're going to talk about percentages, I mean, today Goochland County surrendered 40% of our funding. So we're asking that a similar rural locality put.
So
a little
we
up
already
here.
have, we've gone, but listen, you're not gonna, I feel like I'm being bullied now, that you guys are just starting to bully me. I don't appreciate that. I'm willing to, well, you are. I mean, I'm not, I don't
I
appreciate
think
that.
Austin just made a point that in his locality, he cut 46%, right?
And that other rural
Yes, right at
localities could
40.
do the same. So we've come down 5 million. Okay, we've spent the last 30 minutes or more talking about New Kent and our project. So if it helps everybody's feelings for us to come down another 500 or $1 million, but other people are going to have to make the same, if not more.
So if we take 1 million off of Amy, what does that leave for the delta to be split amongst the next three or the next highest? Oh, okay, we have Todd's hand and Nora.
So before I say what I was gonna say, what's the current delta?
8.4, so 8,441.
Is that assuming Powhatan going down to 5?
Yes,
I think
that's assuming
Powhatan
the
should go
two
back
from
to
Powhatan.
3. Honestly, I whatever their ask was before, I think should probably go back to what it was.
Their
Because they're
ask was
lowest benefit,
their
lowest
ask was 13.
project. Well, somebody said 3.5 was what their ask was last time.
No, that was Miles's exercise for round 5.
Oh, okay.
So I think we're at 8,441. Okay, so Todd, did you have something?
I'm struggling here. I mean, we can probably take less than $1 million off of one of the projects. I would say probably the Pulse, we can go down to 7. That still gets us decent leverage money because we think we'll probably deliver the project for cheaper. But again, I will note that now Henrico is a significant donor, not to the degree of Henrico, not to the degree that Hanover is, but we don't want to keep paying for projects that are well outside of our region or our locality.
You can reduce POI 1 million.
Miles, I guess the top fall line, take $1 million. Oh, not that one. The commerce, yeah. And then I probably could, I'm gonna be cutting it close, $1 million off of the tub. New delta, 4 million, 4.4. Nora?
Hi, I just feel bad I haven't participated at all. I appreciate your little gift to us, but if you need the 400,000, whatever that leftover is, you can take it from our project. But I also, it's been interesting to listen to all this. And I think we need to concentrate on that. We do need to fund regional projects that, this is the regional pot of money, but also we do know not who's the biggest contributors to what they've taken away today, but also to the regional pot of money.
Thank you for that. Yeah, we want to always keep that in mind. So wait, Miles, get that 441 from Nora, please. Not funny. So we're down to a cool 4 million. Oh God. Did you get the $1 million off of Amy?
Yep.
So I guess the
Okay.
regional hub project that didn't score was not originally in the funding mix. So
If
is
I
that
can jump
something
in
where
just
it,
on the scoring, because this has come up at the last meeting and this meeting again, because
Okay.
it's cost benefit and it's normalized, it's zero across the board because it was compared with the benefits for two pulse extension projects. So
Right.
it's the zeros can't really be compared against any other project category.
Okay.
Just for clarity, I want to make sure that's
We
clear.
understand, and thank you for that, Miles. But I guess what funding is that going to be leveraging now? Like
Bus
in
and
this
bus
upcoming,
facilities, bus and bus
Pardon?
facilities. FTA bus and bus facilities
Okay.
closes March 15th. Joe,
Yeah, I can't believe I'm saying this, but take 540, 150 off the 361 at Grove, make it even 10.
nickel and diamond. New Delta miles. 3.45. I can do I can do 2 off of my BRT. Oh. All right, New Delta 1-4. Come on, everybody.
Are there any other projects that total more than 10 million that we haven't touched? Could we round down, Barb, that Route 360 and take 750,000 off of it?
I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I suppose so. I guess I'd rather take 750 off of Powhite. I'm out. I cannot cut more. I'm sorry. I will go on mute.
What,
Like this is poker. Like I can't. I'm out of there.
What's the delta?
709,850.
So less than $1 million. All right, for the sake of just moving this forward, I will suggest that difference of less than $1 million, Amy, can come off of the New Kent project.
We've already taken off 6 million. So no, I really don't think that's fair. Why can't it come off of your 60 million?
Because I don't support that. Because we've already come down 15 million.
Out of your 74 million, right?
Yes. And we contribute,
So-
over 32% of the regional revenues. You contribute what, 2.5%.
Well, but listen, Todd, our project is expected to come back and put at least 1.3 million. That's beginning in 2027 back to the regional pot, right? And that's just base numbers. That's not even on escalating. Okay, and we're having all of these other trucks coming in now because of AutoZone, and the Forger Logistics is going to be coming in, creating more demand for our diesel. So I think that going forward, considering we're the fastest growing locality in the Commonwealth of Virginia, that we, are going to contribute back way more than what we are right now. Okay, so I don't think that, and I think to Nora's point, these are regional dollars, and it's not, there's nowhere that says that each locality gets back what their share that they're contributing. So there's going to be donors. This is going to be the last project in the next 30 years that New Kent County is going to be coming to this group asking for. We're not coming back to the well every single time. I know you say the 100 million. Again, I ask you to go talk to the Secretary's office on that. That was not our doing. And, this is going to be it for us.
I have Nora and then Joe.
Thanks, Tyrona. I'm really sorry, Amy, but I agree with Todd.
Oh no. Joe and then Todd again.
I like round numbers, so take the Atlee Meadow Bridge, make it 700.
Todd.
All right, so our delta now is 694
What is that? Yeah. What is the number?
or 634.
Dang, I thought it was 32.
All right. Amy, this is not personal. I understand the importance of the project to you, but what you haven't committed to is how much of the CVTA local money, which looking at the records, y'all gotten about 7.6 million to date. You can't tell me that you can't find 700,000 of CVTA local money to.
Okay, so we're, just for fairness, we're also contributing $12 million that we have leveraged of private money. So I'm not saying that New Kent isn't going to be putting money onto this. We will, but again, we asked for additional money out of the regional pot that wasn't available because it went on to all of these legacy projects that are, 1,000% and up over their original cost. So, we are gonna have to make up that delta on with our local money, clearly. But right now, we don't have that amount of money to make up. We've already given 6. That's more than we've even have, right, in our pot of money. So we're giving up 6 million out of what we were trying to go for, and actually more than that, since we're not getting the regional pot of money because there was no money available for highway projects since all of the legacy projects got funded. So I just would ask that you all please can take that into consideration. I'm not saying we're not going to put our local money on it. It's just we're not sure exactly how much that's going to be. So, we would just respectfully request that others take a look at their projects again and understand where we are. And if it needs to come off, Powhatan, then maybe that's where it needs to come off of.
Any other comments? So we are 694,000 from a vote.
I'll make a motion that we reduce the New Kent project by that amount and move forward with the projects as shown after that edit.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Ms. Scott, do you have the language for the motion correct?
I would have to get Miles's help with that because I imagine we would word it that the New Kent project would be reduced by, and I don't have the exact difference. And then I think we would say the rest of the projects as amended. And of course, Miles has the exact list, and I imagine we would put that, or we would definitely put that into the minutes.
Yeah, I would like to understand exactly what that dollar amount is going to be on the New Kent project.
So do you want to, let's work out the exact language of the motion before I call the roll, or?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Let's just, wait a second until we have the number. I think that's the first step.
Let me just double check that I zeroed everything out. Okay. So 18,305, 150.
All right,
So
so
Madam Chair, it may be appropriate to see if Ms. Smith is willing to adjust the motion to reflect what's on the screen.
So I make a motion to approve the projects as currently shown. The projects, the selected projects and funding.
thank you. And Mr. Ure, do you take that friendly amendment to the motion?
I do.
All right, Ms. Scott, call the roll.
Yes, ma'am. And I haven't checked to make sure we still have no, we have some people who have left, but I'm going to call the roll per who was here at the beginning of the meeting. Miss Amos,
Aye.
Miss Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Goyne,
Aye.
Mr. Nunez,
Aye.
Mr. Ure,
Aye.
Miss Inman,
I'm going to say aye, but I really don't appreciate all of the conversation about New Kent and how that discussion went today. I'm really disappointed in how you all portrayed us with that aye.
and Chair Clark.
Aye.
Thank you. That motion carries.
All right, I think New Kent, we love you. We love everybody on here. We think that the work that we had to do is hard. We got to go back and, all of our numbers are below with what our localities expected and wanted. And so I hope that everyone can explain that we tried our best and that this is what we were able to achieve. We did it. I think we do have I invite each of you to please come out on February 23rd to the full body meeting. I'm sure that your locality staff would appreciate you being there. And then other than that, I don't think we had anything else on the agenda. Did we, Chad?
No, but if I can take this opportunity, I'd like to publicly thank you for your leadership today, as well as previous meetings. I think this has been an extremely difficult discussion, and the way the group proceeded was admirable. So I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thanks, Todd. I appreciate it. I tried. Didn't go as perfect as we could ever think it might go, but we got it done. And I think that we're a good unit. We know I know Plan RVA and CVTA are working to align some of our funding so that we can have this broader conversation and know what's happening across different sources. But I don't know how that'll pan out, but at least being able to look at other types of funding, I think is helpful sometimes, just for everybody to keep on, fighting for their locality needs. So I'll entertain any other member comments before adjournment.
Madam Chair, if I could real quick, Chet and Miles, can you send that spreadsheet out to us at your earliest convenience?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Madam Chair, if it's okay with you, I'm going to copy Finance Committee as well.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
All right, hearing no other comments, I guess I'll take a motion to adjourn this meeting today.
So moved.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Awesome. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Awesome. Thank you all. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.